pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sperling. Here. Trustee Heinz.
Here.
Trustee Lee. Trustee Heinz. Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we have a quorum this evening. Go ahead and move on. We have public participation. So the first one is public comment. It's the 2-minute opportunity that any member of the public has to come address the board on any topic. If you are on the agenda further down, you do not have to speak. Or if you intend on speaking for item D, the public hearing on the property tax levy, you can come up at that time as well. So is there any member of the public? All right, hearing none. I'll move on to item B. We have Amin and Melissa Galaria from 2921 Gloria Court regarding bike paths. So I believe both of you would like to speak. Is that correct? So you guys can come down. We have your information, but if you could just write your first name down there so we have it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Respected board members, thank you for allowing this time for us to express our concern. My name is Amin Glaria, my wife, Melissa Glaria. We live at 2921 Gloria Court, as you mentioned. That's Lakewood Creek West. We have been residents there for 7.5 years. We are law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. We have no formal complaints or anything like that. But we are here for just one simple reason, and that reason is to have our privacy and our safety restored. There's a path, a walking/bike path that was created just weeks ago that is inches away from our property. And unfortunately, this is causing a big problem for us. We have 3 young children, and there are several bystanders or pedestrians that are walking by. Even the way that it's been created, it's a safety hazard. It's a concern to us. And because our children are between the ages of 3 and 9, we take that very seriously. So that's what we're here for. My wife can elaborate a little bit more in terms of what this means.
Thank you again for your time. As we mentioned, and you can see from the photos, before the path was built, we had a really lovely wide open backyard. Our kids could freely play. All the kids from the neighborhood would gather. The kids' soccer teams would gather. And it was a really safe place for the kids to play. We love that the path has been built. We love the addition to our community. We love the progress that we're making. But unfortunately, the placement of the path without any landscaping is really hindering our safety and our privacy. Our children have lots of dogs stopping and barking ferociously at them. We've had a dog barge into our home while my 3-year-old was looking out the sliding glass door. We have a swing set. It's kind of become a public potty. Unfortunately, it's one of those little nuisances people don't realize when they put a path so close to your home. I have soccer players for sons. The cleats, the dog mess, the netting that's on the hayscaping that's being laid down. It's all a disaster waiting to happen. There's no way I can let my kids play safe if I know that there are pedestrians standing and watching, which we love our community, but when you see people lingering in your backyard, letting their pets, use the bathroom, and they're just watching your children play, we always urge our kids to stay away from strangers. So I find myself saying, kids, come on, come a little closer to the house, don't go on the edge of the property. And it doesn't seem like a big deal to everyone else unless it's your kids that are running inside saying they're scared.
Our children feel exposed. They feel vulnerable. When you see people walking by and they stand and they stare at your children playing, that's a scary feeling. And I think most of us are parents in here that can relate to that.
And it's not just daytime. It's people utilize it to walk their dogs when they come home in the evening times, late at night. we love that people use it, and we appreciate that it's been built, but we feel like the job's unfinished. A little bit of mature landscaping would restore and our privacy, but also our safety. It would deter animals from coming directly onto our grounds. We have a swing set. We have no issues moving it, if that needs to be the case, to allow more room for landscaping. But when you look at the pictures, you can see the way they kind of came over into the property lines. In addition to that, like I said, we need a little bit of privacy back. The only solution that we've heard of is to install a fence, which is pretty expensive when we're on one income and weren't anticipating this. But also, they're only 4 foot allowed in our subdivision. The dogs next door climb over the fence all the time. Luckily, they're little Pomeranians. The first snow, they use it as a ramp and come right up and over. So considering the path is raised, we know the same thing's going to happen if we install a 4-foot fence. It doesn't really provide us a solution. We're not in the situation to be able to just go and invest several thousand in landscaping. And we just feel like we need some help from the community. We've been citizens here for 7.5 years, raising our whole family here, and are committed to the community. But it really affects our livelihood and our home. So on a personal level, we hope that you guys can put yourself in our shoes and just imagine how you would feel if your children's whole backyard changed overnight.
One thing to just add is that any given point, we can have up to 10 to 15 children in our backyard. Just because we have soccer nets, we have swing sets, we have our neighbors have a trampoline, so there are children in the yards all of the time. And again, it's frightening for us as parents. We don't want to be out there 24/7 watching them. When you see people walking by all the time, it's just not a good feeling. And you want to be there for your children. All of us do. And that's all we're asking for, is just to have our privacy and our security restored, because this is a danger to our children. Not only from a privacy standpoint, but even the netting that's on the ground. Our children have fallen several times, and they're very close to that path. What's going to happen if something serious happens, and who's going to be liable for that? I don't believe it should be us. We didn't put this down. And that's why we're here in front of you asking for some type of resolution.
Just one more thing I wanted to mention. In normal paths along our subdivision, in our community, and in the village, they're beautifully lined with trees. Anytime a home is immediately facing a path, or a path is immediately close to the boundary lines of a home, the village has always done a wonderful job. The subdivisions have always done a wonderful job of providing landscaping for numerous reasons: for safety, for privacy, to deter people from crossing through your yards. The field behind us is such an open field that people don't keep their dogs on leashes. That's the biggest concern that we have, is because it's a completely wide open field, they bring the dogs out, they use the bathroom, they play, they go for walks, they fetch balls, and at any moment they want to greet our children. They just do. That's the nature of kids and pets. They just come together. They always do. It was truly alarming when I had a dog barrel over my son and come inside our house while I was cooking dinner. It was just frightening. And in my mind, all the possibilities of what could happen came up, and that's when it really became, maybe it's not such a good thing that this path is being built. I know my 3-year-old thinks it's a racetrack to race his bikes on and stuff, but as a mom, I have this underlining sense of worry that I can't shake, and we're not in the position to be able to financially do anything about it. So that's where we're looking for the village's help.
And one thing to also note is we don't have pets in our home. And our children, while they're okay with little pets, little dogs, big dogs do scare them. And it's, again, as a parent, you don't want them to encounter a big dog that could potentially hurt them or harm them in any way. So again, we just ask for just some understanding and from you to see if there's anything that we can do, come together for some type of resolution.
Thank you very much for your time.
Just so I question, if I may, just so I can get my geography about me. This is the section, this is where the power lines run east to west and not north-south along Bryan Lane, right? Where it turns and starts, it's a little bit further to the south, I believe, where it starts to run east-west? Okay.
And just something else to keep in mind, of all the homes on the row, we have signatures from all of our neighbors on our cul-de-sac that are affected. But of the homes on the row, a majority of them have mature landscaping or fences already. There's only 3 homes, the first 3, that would need some privacy or protection. Specifically, we're advocating mostly for us, of course, but when you look at the situation, you see that these first 3 homes have been forgotten about. And that's where we're just hoping that maybe if you look, you get a chance to see, brainstorm, maybe you can come up with some way to help us with the situation.
And even the netting and hayscaping, if you look at the picture, they've come into our yard. So it's potentially damaging our yard. You'll see the way that it creeps in, that's on our boundary. That's on our property right there. And as I mentioned, our swing set.
Let me address that for a minute. My day job is a landscape construction contractor. What they put down is most likely a dormant seed because of the time of the year, and a blanket, an erosion control blanket. Erosion control blanket on bare soil is required by law for stormwater protection purposes. I understand what you're saying about the tripping, because even when we're installing it, I'm tripping over it, so I understand that. I would think that the netting, it's a biodegradable net that they use, or that they should have used in most cases. I would think that sometime in the spring, this is going to green up, and you will have no further need for this erosion control blanket or this netting. And that's just from experience. But I understand the tripping over it because I do it all the time.
Well, we appreciate that, but it's still in our property, though. That's part of the problem as well, is that if you look at it, it creeps into our property.
And that's something we can look at to see where this is installed. If it's on private property, I don't know if that changes the game a little bit, but we can determine that if it's on your property and if it has the right to be there or doesn't. We can look at that. And I want to thank you for putting all this together. It's very professionally put together to address this. This is the primary reason why we really love to install bike paths, water towers, that kind of thing before development comes, or right at the same time as development, so that it's something that we all grew up with. But in this case, I believe this was a grant that we received to put this in, to really connect to the system, which is part of our overarching goal, is to bike path connectivity. But I completely understand the uncomfortable feeling that you've never felt before, where it's inviting strangers closer to your house. I back up to a park, and my dog, we've lived there for 5 years, my dog cannot accept the fact that people walk in that park and barks his head off every time somebody's there. So I understand and I get that. If somebody has their dog running through the ComEd easement, it ought to be on a leash, or at least it's supposed to by village ordinance. So the question that I had was, well, we kind of addressed the netting, and we'll look into that. The landscaping, you specifically request that we do landscaping, and I was not on my phone texting. I was looking up the aerial of your property. And so Gloria Court runs east-west, and there's 3 parcels that really have no buffer between this and the back of their property. So it would only be three parcels. You mentioned security, that more of a safety factor. Short of a fence, do you think that landscaping would provide that security for you, or is that, to me, that might make it feel less secure, because there could always be something, a dog or a person, whatnot, right behind heavy landscaping that we did that could have quick access to a yard. So would landscaping be the best option for this? Not to say that we can, just...
For me, as the one who's the main concern with the children, when we go for walks throughout the community, we utilize the paths all the time. As a mother, I know for a fact that the paths do deter my children and other people's pets from going into the yards. It's just, they'll use the tree as opposed to running to the swing set. Most people have enough respect to not cross the boundary lines of formal landscaping, of mulching, of things like this. More than anything, it's the vulnerable feeling that we have of people standing and staring at the children, the privacy, but also the safety of the dogs just running freely to the yards. When we look at the other paths along the walkways, other paths in the communities, other paths in the villages, they all have this mature landscaping, this built up, and it literally feels like our home was just forgotten about. When you look at that path compared to the other walkways, there's something missing, and it's that it provides that sense of security, that sense of privacy to keep people off our property. It's a level of respect that people have when you're walking along with your kids and your pets. You don't let them trample through somebody's landscaping and through big fern trees up onto your property. You know, we take care of each other as a community. We discourage our pets from doing those things. A 4-foot fence, I don't feel like it's going to give us that protection, that privacy, because people can still see over it easily. The path is raised, as well as I mentioned that even the pets next door, which are Pomeranians, climb over the 4-foot fence like crazy. We bring them home to their owners all the time. They love our kids. They just naturally come over. The moment that the snow hits, they come over. We anticipate the same thing to happen with a fence. If there were a solution to put up a taller fence, a more private fence, then maybe that would provide some privacy for us. But at this point, a 4-foot fence, I don't feel personally would keep us safe and would deter people more from coming in our yard. I feel like landscaping would do that.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, some of the landscaping in the area, if you look at it, is raised. It's raised, it's like hilly, so it provides that additional level of protection. So in this case, if the landscaping was raised, I think it would deter people from entering our yards. So it just depends on what type of landscaping you're speaking of.
Okay.
Just a quick question. When you're saying the landscaping is raised, is it like a berm along the back of some of the properties
Yes,
where it's up?
built up, yeah.
Okay.
Correct. So right now, the way the path is at a level, then there's a slight dip down into our yard. So adding a 4-foot fence, it's essentially your waist level with everything. It's not going to deter big dogs. It's not going to, we're lucky enough to have sewer drainage on both sides of our home, so that's why the slope is naturally there to drain things down and away. But we personally feel like adding some established mature landscaping, some trees that stay green year-round, the way that we see it in the rest of the community, there's not a kid in their straight mind or a dog that would go through it. I mean, it really does deter them, in my opinion. And when I look around, I feel like that's the best solution that I see.
Okay. So it's more of a visual barrier as opposed to a physical one,
Physical as well.
because they could still kind of walk right between.
Well, I mean, still somebody could walk over
Yeah.
a fence, or squeeze between a tree.
That just seems like, I just don't want to look into this. We don't really have funding available on the project for this. But assuming that we could, and I just kind of wanted to vet that solution, is, we wouldn't be providing a physical barrier to protect your backyard, somebody from walking in your backyard. They still certainly could. So we'd be spending money on a visual deterrent, which is fine if that's the main concern. But as long as everybody is aware that a dog, a person, whatnot, could still walk into your backyard. They could walk over a 4-foot fence too. But that's still always a possibility.
Yeah, to be honest, we are open. Whatever, if you think there's a better solution, we're open to that. All we were looking for, as I stated in the beginning, is we just want our safety and privacy restored, because there's a lot of traffic in our backyard. And it was unwarranted in our eyes, but we understand. I mean, trails are great. We use it as well. But when there's a problem, when there's a safety concern, when it has to do with our children, then there's an issue.
Okay. So what we typically do is we hear your concern, refer this to staff, they'll discuss it and report back to us, and we'll make sure that you're invited at a future meeting to just chat about it. It may be the December 12th meeting. It might not be until after that meeting. But we'll let you guys know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I'll move on to item C, which is a response to previous public comment.
Yes, we had a resident last time that had two issues. The first had to do with maple trees. I'm going to let Director Hoppenstedt cover that one.
Thank you. With regards to the observation of tar spot, which is typically referred to on maple trees throughout the community, tar spot is a fungal disease that can cause a great deal of concern for homeowners, mostly due to its appearance. Luckily, the disease is very cosmetic in nature. It doesn't pose a significant threat to the overall tree health. Tar spot can affect a number of varieties of maple trees. However, it's most commonly reported on Norway, silver maple, and red maples. The fungus can survive the winter months. It can represent itself again in the springtime. The best solution is to rake and destroy all the leaves as they come down. Unfortunately, even that approach would require consistency and diligency amongst neighbors, as the disease can spread by wind. Fungicides are available to treat tar spot. However, they're rarely recommended, even by the Morton Arboretum here locally, due to the cost far outweighing the benefits. So at this point, we are aware, and we're prior to this observation aware of tar spot, but we don't really see a need to respond in the sense of any of our programs to treat for it. So that's my information. If you have any questions, I'm happy to respond.
And we would certainly make that kind of information available to the public if somebody had the tar spots and wanted to address that on their own tree
Right.
outside of the right-of-way.
Well, and I had conversation with Ed earlier this year because I have 2 maples, and I had the tar spot late in the season. And, True Green came out, and they were going to sell me this great fungicide package and everything. And when I contacted Ed, he said, this late in the season, it's not uncommon. If it was in the spring, he might consider doing something, but when it's late in the season like this, it's going to go away.
You may have had it earlier in the season. It starts out as very small yellowish dots on a green leaf, which are harder to observe. As the season progresses and we go through the hotter months of the summer, that the spots continue to grow. In some cases, it's 10% of a leaf is kind of black, and so it's far more noticeable than in the springtime. But again, it can survive through the winter months, so you could have it multiple seasons. It's not causing any significant damage to the tree. So again, is it a cost benefit issue that we want to treat it?
Thank you.
The second issue that wasn't brought up had to do with speeding on Briarcliff, and so I've asked Chief Myers to respond to that.
Thank you very much. We have, Deputy Chief Sanders has talked to the person who was here at the last meeting. We will continue to monitor through our STEP program, Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. We've done STEP up there before where the street appears to be wide, so the cars appear to be speeding. We haven't located a speeding problem, not that there isn't an occasional speeder. So we'll continue to monitor that. The cut-through traffic, that's a tough one. Unless we follow people, we really don't know that they're cutting through, but we'll continue to monitor that. We'll also continue, again, to do our STEP program there.
And nor is cutting through an illegal act and all, right?
You know,
They can
it's,
use Briarcliff, public-
Yeah, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you.
If I may add just a comment, obviously I live right there and I'm always walking on Briarcliff. It does seem to go in phases where all of a sudden there seems to be a lot of speeding, and we also get a lot of passing where they hit the gas and go around the cars because they just don't have the patience.
Sure. We can check into that too.
Just so you're aware of that, but again, I know I've talked to you about it several times, and it just seems like it comes and goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is it.
All right. Thank you. Move on to item D, under public participation. We have the public hearing on the property tax levy for 2016. If there's any member of the public, I guess I'll open the public hearing. If there's any member of the public that's here to address that issue, come down to the podium. I don't want to cut anybody off. All right, thank you.
Are we discussing that during the public hearing, or?
We'll discuss it later on the agenda. There's first reading of the levy.
Sorry.
All right, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on. We have a proclamation. We have 2 proclamations. The first one is the 50th anniversary of Waubonsie Community College. Once I get that up. So I'll read the proclamation, entertain a motion for approval, and then we have Dr. Sobek and Blacksmith with us today to address the board. So with that, we have a proclamation commemorating Waubonsie Community College's 50th anniversary. Whereas Waubonsie Community College was approved by voters in 1966 and accepted into the American Association of Junior Colleges in 1967. And whereas WCC, with the governance of its Board of Trustees, has served more than 290,000 students over the past 50 years. And whereas WCC provides higher educational opportunities, occupational programs, community education, workforce, and economic development opportunities that add to our area economy. And whereas WCC acknowledges that quality education is not acquired in the classroom alone, but also by being exposed to cultural offerings and installing a civic responsibility. Whereas WCC offers educational opportunities at affordable tuition rates for all residents of the Community College District 516, from associate's degree to certificate programs to adult education, lifelong learning, and dual credit options in high school, and whose students range in age from 17 to 90, and who come from all backgrounds and from all walks of life. And whereas the college is setting a strong path for the next 50 years, serving 22 municipalities and having grown from one campus to 4. And whereas it is fitting that we should join in this expression of our pride and appreciation for the many benefits that our community has enjoyed over the years and the years to come because of the growth and prosperity of Waubonsie Community College. Now, therefore, I, Matt Brawley, President of the Village of Montgomery, do hereby urge all citizens to join me in recognizing the tremendous influence that Waubonsie Community College has had since opening in 1967 by giving easy access to the residents of Community College District 516 and the opportunity to pursue and enjoy higher education, continuing education, and training, and thus improving our quality of life.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to welcome you to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Christine Sobek, and I have the pleasure of serving as president of Waubonsie Community College, and it is a delight to be here with you this evening. So President Brawley and members of the Village Board, on behalf of the Waubonsie Community College Board of Trustees, our faculty, our staff, and our students, we thank you so much for this recognition. I have two other representatives of Waubonsie I would like to recognize tonight. First, Montgomery resident Mr. Patrick Kelsey, for his volunteer service on our board. You may know that he was elected to the Waubonsie Community College Board in 2015. Mr. Kelsey, thank you for being here. And also, Dr. Lulu Blacksmith, our Director of Government and Community Engagement, is with me this evening as well, and does a lot in our community to work with our elected officials and our municipalities. We are very grateful for the support of Montgomery, and they've been a key component of District 516 since our founding. You may be interested to know that nearly 8,000 residents of Montgomery have had the opportunity to take advantage of Waubonsie Community College classes and programs. You did hear in the resolution that we began in 1967. Our first board meeting was actually August 22nd of 1966. So the board came together and had, in that very short amount of time, to create all the programs, the services, hire the faculty, hire the first president, and amazingly, classes began in August of 1967 with more than 1,000 students. And so we're very proud of our history, our proud past of these last 50 years. We've grown, as you mentioned, to a 4-campus network. We serve approximately 11,000 students each semester, close to 20,000 students a year. And we are now one of the major employers, one of the largest employers in our community, employing close to 1,500 people. So we're delighted to be here this evening. It's been a pleasure. We're about halfway through our 50th anniversary year. We have another half year of celebration and activities to go, and we are so proud of Montgomery being part of our communities and so thankful tonight for this wonderful recognition. We will, of course, take the proclamation back to our Board of Trustees, and at our December meeting, we will proudly present it to them on behalf of this board. So again, thank you very much. We're so happy you're proud of our proud past, and we look boldly to our shared future with you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Want to come for the photo? Gonna take a quick photo?
It's rolling his eyes.
Let me say, Doctor, that Ruby Collins was on your first board, and she's a good friend of mine. She lived over by the east side by Bardwell. And when they bought the property in Sugar Grove, everybody laughed at them. They said, who's on a driveway out here? And it's just so expensive, and now probably 1 acre out that area would be what you bought the whole campus for. But people laughed at them, but in the end, it really proved to be valuable insight.
Thank you for coming, appreciate it. All right, we have one more proclamation that I'll read this evening and then entertain a motion for approval. Whereas motor vehicle crashes kill 998 people in Illinois during 2015, and whereas hundreds of those deaths involved a driver impaired by alcohol and/or drugs. And whereas the December holiday season is traditionally one of the most deadly times of year for impaired driving. And whereas for thousands of families across the state and the nation, holidays are a time to remember loved ones lost. And whereas organizations across the state and the nation are joined with the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over and other campaigns that foster public awareness of the dangers of impaired driving and anti-impaired driving law enforcement initiatives. And whereas the Village of Montgomery is proud to partner with the Illinois Department of Transportation's Division of Traffic Safety and other traffic safety groups in the effort to make our roads and streets safer. Now therefore, I, Matt Brawley, Village President in Montgomery, do hereby proclaim December 2016 as Drunk and Drugged Driving 3D Prevention Month in Montgomery, and do call upon all citizens, governmental agencies, business leaders, and all public and private institutions to promote awareness of the impaired driving problem, to support programs and policies to reduce the number of incidences of impaired driving, and to promote safer and healthier behaviors regarding the use of alcohol and other drugs this December holiday season and throughout the year.
So moved?
Second.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Thank you. I'll move right along to the consent. I'll read the items. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the village board meeting. Did you have something?
I wondered if we could pull item I for separate discussion.
That's F. Oh, you said I? I thought you said 5. Okay.
We had talked about possibly modifying the language to that, and I'm kind of wanting to confirm if we
Yeah,
could do it.
absolutely. We'll pull that. That'll be M under separate action.
Thank you.
So which one are we pulling, I or F?
I, sorry. I thought he said 5.
Travel reimbursement policy.
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Thank you for not making me read it first. All right. Item A, we have minutes of the village board meeting of November 14th. The executive session minutes from November 14th. Accounts payable through November 22nd. Village schedule of meetings for 2017. Approval of the 2016-17 snow removal and ice control plan. Item F, ordinance 1755. That's regarding Charitable Games Act. This is the second reading. G, ordinance 1757. That's regarding unlawful to burn any prohibited materials. This is a second reading. And lastly, we have H, resolution 2016-016, authorizing repair work in IDOT right-of-way.
We'll move to approve, and then I have a question.
Second.
All right? Go
On
ahead.
the meeting schedule, the August board date, 14th, is that right after Montgomery Fest?
It is, and wasn't that so much fun last year? I don't know if it is. I was just saying. I know we met the Monday after this year.
No, we didn't. The year before we
We
did.
canceled.
Oh,
this-
did you?
No,
this
we
one, I
didn't,
think,
it
this
didn't
year.
fall that way this year. I just don't want to get slammed with a bunch of stuff right after Montgomery Fest, because everybody's working that whole weekend.
Yes. We'll pull that off consent while he looks that up.
Okay, thank you.
So that will be, we'll add that to the end, so that'll be N.
So do I have to move to approve with,
That would be the Monday after, because I believe should be 11, 12, 13.
So we pulled that, so we'll address that when we get there.
That becomes N,
Yes.
as in Nancy? Okay.
thank you.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? That does not include consent item H. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And Trustee Bond.
Yes.
I read that wrong. I meant D. All right, moving on, we have items for separate action. The first one, hold on a second. Several of these. Is it A, B, C, and D are all the same project?
Actually, A, B are the same, and C, D are the same.
Okay, so we'll discuss these together, and we'll vote on them separately if it's time to vote. So with that, item A, which is regarding the Plan Commission meeting the annexation of 1726 Jericho Road, and this is the Aurora University Sports Complex. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tonight, you have before you a recommendation from the Plan Commission for a small parcel that would be added to the items C and D. 1.4 acre site that is along Jericho Road at 1726 Jericho Road, currently unincorporated, would be added to the overall AU athletic complex that's being planned, zoned R1, which would be, which would allow the AU complex to be part of the PUD as a R1 parcel. So in 2 weeks, you would have the ordinance for approval of this annexation of this small tract of land. Plan Commission and staff recommend approval.
Okay,
I move-
any questions? How big is it?
1.4 acres.
So it's the residential property in the front.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe that the university in the future would, in all likelihood, tear down that building and utilize the property in another fashion. But for now, it's being used for warehouse storage.
Okay. Any questions? This is first reading, so, well,
I move to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation.
Second.
any discussion? Call the roll. This is item A.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And Trustee Bond.
Yes.
That carries 5-0, thank you. And then item B, which is ordinance 1760, we'll see again, this is first reading. We'll vote on that at a future meeting.
Correct.
That move on to items C and D, which is a recommendation of the Plan Commission for the, I guess, the updated plan unit development for the Aurora University project. Go ahead.
Correct, thank you. So again, the Plan Commission at their last meeting on the 17th recommended approval of a special use PUD agreement for, and final plat for the AU complex, which has been modified since the time that you saw it late last year by the addition of the New Life, or the former New Life World Church Center. This property has been added to the property that was acquired and reviewed and approved as a PUD agreement last year for the Wolf Run Golf Course property, as well as now this smaller tract that we just discussed at 1726 Jericho Road. So what's included is a concept plan, a master plan, and a final plat for the first phase. The concept plan shows how the university intends to puzzle piece their athletic fields together in the future, with the first phase including an athletic dome, a softball field, and then an additional field and stadium complex that would be for lacrosse and soccer. That's indicated in your packet as their master plan for the first phase. Also, as a part of this, as I mentioned, is the final plat for phase one of the development. There'll be multiple phases to this development over the next several years as they move forward with their fundraising and their ability to construct additional fields. So with that in mind, the Plan Commission recommended approval with the condition that final engineering for the first phase be reviewed and approved by, obviously, the village engineer. That has not been submitted as of this time, but obviously we would need final engineering approved and reviewed for detention purposes and other engineering-related items prior to the university hopefully breaking ground next spring. And that information will be provided to the board at a later date. There's still the need to review some newly developed plans that have come forward for the overall complex itself that were submitted about 10 days ago by the community development staff, and the fire district still needs to weigh in on the site plan for the first phase of the development as well. There are several items that we're, as of just an hour ago, we were still talking to the university about, and I think we've been able to, from a staff perspective, resolve what we feel is in the best interest of the village for the overall design of the subdivision, or the first phase or plat of the development, the athletic complex. A couple of concerns that the staff had regarding the latest site plan have been addressed, again, just an hour ago, as being a planner's interpretation on their consulting end of what the university wanted to include. That has been submitted to the village. It works out a couple problems that staff had noted with regards to monumentation up at Jericho Road that the university would like to put in place, as well as alignment of edge lawn. You might recall that edge lawn dead ends in Aurora at Jericho Road now to the north. Our intention is to have the university dedicate land for the future extension of edge lawn to the south and ultimately down, hopefully crossing the tracks at someday down near the Nexio and American Crystal properties all the way to Alcott Road. This would be the first piece of the puzzle moving south of Jericho Road to accomplish that ultimate road design. So with that dedication request, the staff has indicated that there should be a complete dedication of edge lawn as identified on our concept plan. I'll let the university representation address that in a minute if you'd like. A couple other things that we're looking for information on in terms of the athletic field lighting. They intend to light these fields at some point in the future, maybe not immediately, but at some point in the future. We've recommended that the standards that have been established at Stewart Park by the Fox Valley Park District be incorporated for this property. And we're working on getting those design standards from their company that would be installing the lights. The university has asked that the landscaping requirement for periphery landscaping be removed from a requirement of the overall site. And on its face, the staff was a little bit concerned with that, but when you look at the abutting properties, on one side, at the far south side, we're talking about the BNSF Railroad someday in the future when the development goes that far south. On the east side, it would be a quarry that's or abandoned quarry that's basically a detention pond now in the city of Aurora. North, there are several trees that are in place now abutting a couple residents that would be to the far northeast end of this development. There may be the need for some landscape buffering there because of the magnitude of the development, and specifically the dome that is in close proximity or planned to be in close proximity to that location. And then they've already shown landscaping that would be along the extension of edge lawn at this point in time. So we intend to work with the university on their overall landscape plan. From security purposes, they do not want to do low-lying bushes, but I think they intend to show an overall landscape plan that includes deciduous and coniferous trees throughout the entire property as they phase in their athletic fields. Seems like a workable solution that we'll have to report back to you on in 2 weeks as to what their conceptual landscape design would ultimately be. As I mentioned earlier, we do not have final engineering plans for the first phase, and that's important to note that until just recently, we did not know how they intended to take care of their detention requirements for the overall property. Obviously, it has to meet the stormwater management ordinance established by Kane County. And there was talk about using a combination of maybe detention ponds, open-air detention ponds, as well as a vault system The university has told me today that they intend to go with an open-air detention pond system, and we should have preliminary engineering drawings on that in the next 2 weeks as well. Landscaping, I've mentioned. Lighting specs, I've mentioned. The thing that the staff had not brought forward to the Plan Commission was sidewalks along Jericho Road. The Plan Commission recommendation included their desire to see sidewalks along Jericho Road. There are already sidewalks along Jericho Road because of the church property that the university has acquired. Several years ago, when the board approved the site plan for the church, that was a requirement that was incorporated by the village board to have sidewalks. So there is the frontage along the 1726 property, the 1.4 acre property, that would be sidewalk related if the Plan Commission's recommendation was met. And then very small portion of what was the access drive and adjacent property that was the driveway to the Old Wolf Run Golf Course. So that was something that was brought up at the Plan Commission meeting, so, and part of their recommendation. So what staff intends to do is to continue to work with the university and their consultants to develop a more complete review of the newly submitted concept plans and also the plan description. We're working on some language within the plan description to move forward to make a positive recommendation to you for hopefully approval in 2 weeks at your meeting on the 12th. I might also mention that President Brawley, you had a question regarding the plan description and the request for no further public hearings. The plan description includes all of the potential uses that the university anticipates at this time for all phases of the development, not just this first phase. So again, it's kind of a piecemeal cookie cutter concept plan where there are areas identified in your packet on a concept plan basis for the overall property, not just the first phase. So when the university looks at putting in 5 years, say, a track and field complex, that they could fit that into one of the parcels that's identified on the concept plan. So your question about future public hearings, I think, has been identified in the fact that this was laid out to the public as multiple uses, not just these first 3 uses that would be established.
Okay. Works. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. I know the petitioner has several representatives here. If anybody that would like to speak, please come down to the podium. Just add your name. I think we have all your contact information.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Goldsmith from the Dykema Law Firm representing the university. And with me is Camilla Moran. She's going to actually give you the university's exciting approach to this development. And then I'll get into the details with a couple of boards, which hopefully I can move up front and you can see better.
Thanks.
Hello, thank you. As Bruce said, my name is Carmela Moran, and I'm Vice President for Administration at Aurora University. I thank you for giving us the opportunity tonight to give you some information about the Spartan Athletic Park. Thank you for passing that out. So I'd like to kind of give you a little bit of overview about our vision here. As you know, Aurora University namesake are our Spartans. We consider ourselves to be tough competitors. Since 2006, AU has been a dominant force among 12 institutions belonging to the Northern Athletics Collegiate Conference. In the last 2 years, the Spartans broke into the top 100 among 450 colleges and universities competing in Division III of the NACC. As the Spartans continue to climb into the top tier of Division III, we feel that the time is right for a major investment that will ensure that the 700-plus student athletes have that powerful home field advantage for decades to come. Our athletic director and coaches at Aurora University are dedicated to the overall development of the student athlete. Our student athletes set positive examples as they earn strong grade point averages and excel as leaders in their majors and campus organizations. Spartans are a sense of pride to the university and to the Spartan fans across the country. Intercollegiate athletics are integral to the educational experience at Aurora University. At Aurora University, we firmly believe that intercollegiate athletics should promote the character development of participants, enhance the integrity of higher education, and promote civility in society. Towards these ends, we strive to adhere to fundamental values such as respect, civility, honesty, and responsibility. Student athletes and staff at Aurora University are always expected to operate with principles of sportsmanship and ethical conduct in mind. However, only a handful of AU intercollegiate teams compete right now in university-owned facilities. Alumni Hall building on the main campus is home to coach and administrative offices, locker rooms, athletic training, and exercise science facilities. Thornton Gymnasium on Aurora's campus is home to basketball and our volleyball teams. Football, soccer, and lacrosse teams rely upon the adjacent Vago field, which was built in 2008 for practice and competition. The university's varsity and club hockey claim home ice at an outstanding nearby arena. All other AU teams, including softball, baseball, golf, tennis, cross country, track and field, and bowling, depend upon rented park district, commercial, or public school facilities. So what we have before you in this packet that I've given you is our Phase 1 of Spartan Athletic Park. Over the past 12 months, the university has invested over $3 million in land acquisition for the new athletic park. During the next phase of the project, AU expects to expend another $3 million on the site work, circulation, and parking improvements necessary to support construction of softball, lacrosse, and soccer facilities. As you can tell, we're also planning an entry arch and gatehouse, as it's shown on the handouts that you have. As the park grows over time, a series of key architectural elements, things that AU normally uses in its construction, such things as red brick, black wrought iron, and bronze signage, will also provide unity and definition as we continue other phases of the development. Aurora University's signature colors are Spartan blue and white. Many of you may know that from if you've ever come out to Vago Field or to any of the athletic events. Those colors will also be evident throughout the campus as we continue to build phases, as well as, and I cannot say this enough times, to the university's commitment to environmental stewardship and thoughtful landscaping. I think anyone who has had the opportunity to be on the Aurora University campus or drive by the campus very much knows that the campus has very consciously invested in the landscaping around the university. Subsequent phases of the project, what we're hoping for are things like a baseball stadium, track and field facilities, and then additional practice fields for football, lacrosse, soccer, and field hockey. Obviously, this will all be done in stages as we're able to get fundraising. Might you have any questions?
Thank you.
Some landscaping questions, better to wait, or?
Go ahead.
With regard to the landscaping behind the dome, which I would take to be the north, what will people, if I'm reading the plan correctly, there are people living in that area, what will they be looking at? What will they see?
So maybe I can help with that. So the actual dome would start about 180 feet from the nearest property line. And in the future, there probably would be a parking lot in between. So there'll be a buffer. They have trees now. If need be, we would put additional trees. We committed from the first plan that we submitted to you that we would shield headlights in any circumstance. So if that becomes an issue, if parking goes there. Otherwise, the dome's at a great distance, so they don't need a visual buffer, I don't think, other than what they have plus what might be added to just fill it out.
Do you envision refuse containers on the back of the dome, or?
No, there actually is a building to the west side, and I would suspect it would be inside that for storage of
You just addressed my third, the obvious parking lot to the side of the dome currently doesn't really display any kind of shielding for headlight spillage.
No, when we had our first public hearing on Wolf Run, at that point, there were 4 residents. Ironically, the resident who sold his house to us was the one most vocal, and so we committed in the original plan description, which is perpetuated in the new plan description, that any place where we have the potential of having lights flash into the neighbors' yards, we will screen that.
So
We'll do it with a combination of things. The university is adverse to like solid fencing or something like that as a general rule because it attracts unwanted elements.
I don't disagree, but I'm pleased that you're addressing that. I'm gathering the landscaping plan will have enough detail in it to reflect. Okay.
Well, the plan description itself establishes performance standards, and then as we develop, the kind of the disconnect is this is such an unusual site because of what is on the neighborhood. So on one side you got a quarry, so I don't think we would be spending our money there as opposed to in the campus itself. The tracks are raised, and that doesn't present an opportunity. On the west side, there's a bunch of trees, so there's a natural buffer. And of course, to the north, to the extent that we have to buffer from the homes that are there, we will buffer those homes. But they also have mature landscaping.
This deciduous landscaping, though, if memory serves, it's not.
Correct.
It's not Carlite height.
No, but if we were to put parking there, we would buffer that all.
Okay. Thank you for addressing that.
I wanted to get to
Flip that, please.
Yes. North is down. Hey, Dale, do you have the wireless mic? Just that way, you won't get recorded then. Never mind.
I'll just do it this way.
Yeah.
Good.
So when you have a project that's probably 20 years from inception to completion, and you're using a PUD concept, what we try to do is identify areas within the site after you get through phase 1 where any number of different uses could be done, and then in the plan description put the identification of the types of uses. So obviously the principal use would be athletic, but it's possible as the university develops over time that other programs, including educational programs, may be suitable on this site. And so the university has put the flex into the plan description. So there could be a building, there could be an educational building, there could be other kind of facilities at the site. The dome is a major project which will require a lot of fundraising. So it's It's something that would be great if we can accomplish it, but otherwise, it's just another spot where we can put in facilities over time. So that's the overall concept. What we've included in the concept is the preferred alignment for Edgelawn Extended. And so let me talk to you for a minute about some of the issues that relate to the site. So the university is very concerned, as a general matter, about an isolated site like this from a safety standpoint, public safety as well as the safety of the students using the facility. So what we want to do is we want to fence the area and we want to gate it. You can't really gate a publicly dedicated road. So what we are proposing is we dedicate the first 200 feet, then put a gatehouse and a fence with a gate there. We would have a secondary access farther to the east, and that would also be gated. And these would be crash gates so that the fire department can get in, or there'll be a Knox box, whatever the fire department wants. But the idea is that this is our private site. It's not open to the public. Public may be invited to events, sporting events, but not for our practices and not to use the facilities. So for that reason, and we probably will have 24/7 security on the site. So for that purpose, we would like to propose to dedicate a portion for now. If in the future actually I need the other plan. So Edgelawn is here. So in the future, if it turned out that the village went forward to extend Edgelawn down to the tracks, we would move our access point over here on the east-west entrance to the site instead of on the north-south. Then you'd have the publicly dedicated Edgelawn, but we would have a controlled site again gated on this east-west leg. So we would still have complete control of the site. But for the time being, we actually like to put monumentation at the entrance. We want to really develop this as a classy facility. And you can see, if you look at the main campus, how with a combination of signage and landscaping, the university has really upgraded the image of the campus over the last 10 to 15 years. So that's kind of the overall plan. The other issue, so sidewalk is always an interesting issue because in this context, where is it going to go? So we know it's a good public safety issue. We would prefer to wait to build it until there's some connection, like maybe a trail system or some other reason for building it. But if you want the sidewalk now, we'll build the sidewalk now. So that's really not an issue. On lighting, we're using the same company, Musco, that did the lighting for Stewart. We have the details, which we'll supply to the village to establish that we will meet those same standards that were used at Stewart. With respect to detention, we do have current facilities on campus that have under surface detention. For this site, it was decided to go to an open detention facility. So that's been a more recent tweak, and I would expect that you will find that facility southeast of the current, there's a couple of ponds that are already there, but in that general area on the southeast of the phase one is where we would put the initial detention. And then with the plan description, I think we're really close to what would be a final working document with some tweaks that we can make in the next week or so. We'll be in good shape to give you something final to look at. And I'd be happy to answer questions. Sure.
All right.
This monument signage, can you indicate that? Is that
It would be up here
on Edgelawn?
on Edgelawn.
So across the public right-of-way?
Right. But it's high enough to accommodate a fire truck, so it would not interfere with normal public safety. In the future, if the road went through, we would anticipate that might be moved to the east-west point.
And you're going to gate it? It's going to
Yes.
be gated
The
and
whole
closed?
area would be fenced, and we would gate that, and it would be controlled access by our public security, which is a licensed force.
How does that work with snow plowing and it's a public road, but they're going to gate
We
it?
would not be responsible for snow plowing as it would exist in its first phase as a driveway. They would dedicate a portion, I mean, staff is asking for dedication of the entire length, but their intent is to dedicate a small portion at the front. But it would remain as a private drive until such time as the village was able to come through with capital improvement funds and develop the entire cross-section as an urban cross-section. Then we would obviously, Todd's crew would take over as snow plowing.
Okay, thank you.
And for the time being, we understand we're going to take our snow plowing to Jericho. So we understand that regardless of whether it's public. But I don't want to minimize the importance of keeping the rest of it private. If you make this a publicly dedicated road, and we're going to build a road all the way down to here that's in the public right-of-way, and we can't control it, that poses significant public safety concerns to the university. And the other side of it is, and I think Steve would agree with me on this, that if it's public, I don't know that we can gate it. So I'm concerned about getting a situation where we have something where the public thinks it's a public road, but it isn't in fact, and we're now having to control it and having to deal with explaining that, yeah, it's public, but you can't drive on it.
All right. With the rest of it, the green area, would you be dedicating that at this time or not?
We've agreed in the plan description to dedicate, if I go back to the other, we will give you our commitment, our legal commitment, to dedicate all the road at the time you're ready to build a road. But we don't want to dedicate it because part of it, which we are building, would then become a public right-of-way. So if we keep, the irony is the 200 feet really get us an address on Edgelon, but after you get beyond the 200 feet, we're trying to keep it all private.
So on the other image, 200 feet looks to go past your, where's 200 feet on this?
About where the gatehouse is?
Oh, that building there.
It's about 560 feet from Edgelon down to where you see their cut going to the east into their parking lot. That's about 550, 60 feet.
Oh, okay.
Bruce, where's the, it had to be 500 feet of sidewalk that the church, when we kind of made them put that in?
It's hard for you to see on your site plan, but there's a, Bruce, can you put up the Phase 1 site plan?
And they kind of thought it would be best that the residents would come to their church more
Basically-
too, but it was basically a useless sidewalk.
There is sidewalk essentially between the two beige drive access points that they're identifying as future construction. There's existing sidewalk that you can barely see on the site plan that was put in by the church. So what we're saying, what the Plan Commission was saying is from that driveway, the center point driveway to the
Yeah.
east, there should be sidewalk added there.
What about the sidewalk that goes all the way down? It goes this way instead of along Jericho.
That'll probably be taken up as part of their overall site development. It's not going to fit, I don't believe it's going to fit.
With their diagram. I looked at it too, but at the same time, I can see their point. Why put a sidewalk in now? Because we're asking them to, where it leads to nowhere like this church did.
I'm sure if there's a portion of the sidewalk that was put in by the church that goes north-south that you're talking about.
There's a lot of
It
it.
could be incorporated, probably some of it around the dome, but some of it's going to have to come out.
Right.
Yeah, and that looks like it's right immediately adjacent to the entrance drive, like right next to it.
I
So
can't
don't
tell
know.
from the site plan,
It's a
but
real.
It's not worth adjusting an entire plan to save, but I
No.
see what you're saying.
No, it
We
isn't.
spent a lot of money on it.
We're going to do mass grading and try
Yeah.
to take everything out.
Yeah,
Right,
so,
that's why I'm also saying there's no sense of us telling you to put a sidewalk between this and this when you're gonna say, 2 years from now, we're gonna take that whole area out. It wouldn't make sense. I would see it around the athletic field because you're gonna use that.
We'll
But-
have walkways interior to the development. We'll have interconnected parking lots, and that's kind of where pedestrians will be.
Just to be clear, what the Plan Commission was saying was the sidewalk that would go from this center drive to, if you can envision where the Wolf Run
Right,
access point was,
yeah,
that's what they're talking about.
okay.
So generally, and I know you know this, what we've required of folks is, as they develop, usually require sidewalk or bike path, some equivalent, across the frontage of their property. Typically, if somebody's dedicating right-of-way, we would also ask for that to go down, in this case, edge lawn, which I don't believe we're asking for in this case. I'm also a huge fan of sidewalks to nowhere. I'm not, but I just think that it's such a waste of money, time, and effort so that it can be ripped out and whatnot. So I'm all for connectivity of sidewalks and bike paths, but to put in some chunks that might go nowhere for 10 years, 15 years, maybe there's some other alternative with, we can figure out how much that's worth. That's your responsibility and requirement. Maybe that's something that we escrow and do later, if that makes
And
sense.
what we're saying is, this is a huge investment, and the university's been there for over 100 years. We're going to be here a long time.
Yeah.
And if you, 15, 20 years from now, decide there's connections that need to be made, we're still going to be around, and we'll still be able to, and that can be in the plan description, so it can be a perpetual obligation.
Mhm. So one question that I had for our attorney, or the right-of-way issue, is there a way that we can solve that? Or are you guys kind of working through that and report back to us?
No, I don't know that it's insoluble. I think that if it's a commitment for the future, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. I think that was probably one of the first things that when, and I'm very excited about this project, and I don't want to indicate otherwise. When I first started talking directly with Dr. Mannion about this, maybe several years ago, right after I took office, very excited to welcome Aurora University into the community. I talked to Dr. Sherrick last week and kind of reiterated the same. I've also been to Aurora University, and for those of you that have been there, it's a beautiful campus, and I have no doubts that the university will do nothing but the same here in our community. That aside, there are some of these issues, some of these smaller issues, I think that we can kind of come to an agreement on before the ordinance is approved. And just a couple of things that I hit on. The dedication one is important, or at least having some mechanism where we can, if we got funding for it next year, where it wouldn't be another negotiation, it would be ready for us to put that in. I think staff can kind of figure that out. The lighting, just one comment that I would make about Stewart Sports Complex. I live across Route 30. I probably live a quarter to a half mile away from there. When those lights are on at night, it is absolutely glaring in your windows. And I'm not even right up against that, but you can see like the house wincing a quarter of a mile away. So the staff's push to get us, to get these residents, that's my main concern around there, is these several residential houses, that they do have adequate protection from light spilling onto their property, and not the Stewart. I don't know if it has the 0-foot candles, but regardless, it's very, it would be very obtrusive. And I'm glad that you guys were here earlier when you saw we put a bike path in behind somebody's house, and to see the concern that's on their faces. So I think that would be magnified for those properties up to the north and potentially to the west. And that's my main concern with landscaping, is just to ensure that that has adequate buffering, not the row of 30 trees that you show. I don't know if all of that is needed for this, but you understand what my concern is.
Some of what we're showing is aesthetics and not buffer.
Okay. The other, what was I? Yeah, those are my main concerns that I had. Anybody else have any other questions, concerns?
Do we have a height on the dome, a projected height?
It will be under 100 feet, maybe as little as 75 feet, somewhere between 75 and 100 feet. Depends on the manufacturer and the actual footprint, but based on the footprint we're using, it's probably going to be about 75 to 80 feet.
Okay.
And that's why we moved it back farther. So it would just be less intrusive. I mean, we have 3 neighbors, basically. So because at various times we put it in various, at one point we had over here, one point over here. We figured we put it in the middle, and you have a buffer of 180 feet. That's about the best we can do and still be in the first phase of development. Otherwise, we'd be land balancing too much of the site. And it's a very expensive site it's got a lot of grade to it, so there's going to be a huge amount of earthwork to do.
Just from my perspective, I'm fine with the dedication of the roadway. I'm fine with the monument sign going over the front, as long as Aurora University is aware that at some point they're going to have to move that once that road goes all the way through. And I'm also okay with no sidewalk at this point, because you're right, if the sidewalk ends on either side, there really is no point. I guess I'm fine with, I don't see any other issues.
Yeah, and I certainly I don't want to imply that we relax our rules on the sidewalk. I think we've required the fire district, the Stewart Sports Complex, all of the village facilities to install the sidewalk, or at least that's their requirement. So whether it's installed now or later is the part that I'm willing to give on a little bit. One thing that would be very helpful is if you guys could show us the current plan with the aerial underneath it, because I'm trying to piece it together on my phone and this just to see what exists. But if that's not too much trouble to get,
No, we can do that for the next meeting.
something that would be very helpful, I think.
Happy to do that.
Tom Fire Chief Myers looked at the original plan for this, if I'm correct, right? And he's got to look at the revised plans as soon as they come out?
Yeah, we don't have comments back from the fire district, but we anticipate having them back before your next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
We think we actually got comments, but we couldn't find them on our system.
Okay.
All right. If you have any more questions after tonight, you can forward those to staff. If you guys had anything else to add, otherwise we'll,
No, we're just happy to answer any questions you have.
assuming that staff and the petitioner get all this stuff ironed out, we'll add this to our next board meeting for approval, if we can do it that quickly. And if it bumps into January, then I don't want it to, but,
Yeah, we're going to do everything we can to get it done this
all right.
December, because we really want to get moving with final engineering so that we can break ground as early as weather permits.
Okay.
Could we discuss the waiver of public hearing, or is that part of what they'll bring back at the next meeting?
I might be able to add some light on that. There was a public hearing, and there was a public hearing with their first phase last year with, it was Wolf Run Golf Course. There was a public hearing before the Plan Commission just recently as the church property has been added to the overall proposed complex. So we've had a public hearing. What I was trying to explain earlier was we had a public hearing that identified in the plan description all of the potential uses that the university sees in the future phases of the development. The focus was on the first phase, with what they've identified as the 3 fields, but all uses were identified for future inclusion in the complex in the different parcels. So unless the university comes back and decides that they want to change the PUD, there would be approval for the additional phases of the subdivision portion of it that would come before the Plan Commission and the Village Board, but there wouldn't be any future public hearings, again, unless they change the PUD.
So essentially, every potential use was broadcast in that public hearing for everybody, including us, to comment on. If they come back to and submit engineering drawings for shifting any of this or any of those uses, a public hearing wouldn't be required.
Would not.
And just
Correct.
to be clear, we've had 2 public hearings, because the Wolf Run, we had a public hearing, same uses were proposed.
Right.
Same kind of conceptual layout was proposed.
Yeah.
So the public said, and the last, it was a breath of fresh air. At the last public hearing, we actually had people who were neighbors to the west who were supportive. So
Awesome.
that was a nice sign.
The first
When they move
public
forward to
hearing-
develop the future phases, those plans will have to come back, but a public hearing just would not be required. Because
That's, I think, where I'm going. It's not the use, it's a non-conforming use to begin with. I'm reticent to take away public discussion unless there's a clear and obvious need to do that. It actually is to the benefit of the public to have a better understanding of what's about to happen here.
That's the whole point of the plan description, is it's a set of markers and performance standards that require the university to comply whatever they do on the site, unless they change the use, and then they have to come back and visit that again with public hearing.
First public hearing, Stan, the only one that came was it was two gentlemen. One gentleman talked. I think he and his sister own the two. Did you buy those houses up front?
The only house we bought is the one that was right up here. No, it was actually, we bought one of the two. The other one was
Okay.
his aunt.
Right, his aunt.
His aunt is over here.
Right, she didn't buy, but he sold?
He sold.
Okay, well, he was the only guy that had any just argument about lights or roads or anything, and if he sold, then you had nobody at the public hearing that was against anything.
Well, it takes away the opportunity for a future landowner to have any voice.
Well, everything else was described, though. I think he was worried because he was worried the driveway was going to go right next to his house. And once that was changed now, because they said it could be going down, where the edge lawn is, so. But other than that, there was nobody else there and it was all in the planning.
The flip side of your
Yes.
question is that the university couldn't invest the kind of money it's investing unless it knew that it could fill the plan as proposed. And so when you're making a commitment for what will be many millions of dollars in the first phase, you have to know that you have a right to develop the rest of the property consistent with the same standards. And that's why the PUD, I have clients with PUDs that my father, who was a zoning lawyer, started in 1976, and they're still operating and they still work fine in mixed-use communities and stuff like that, because everybody knows the rules have been set from day one.
I might be overstating my concern too. It's the implementation and the sensitivity to the surrounding property that is my only concern.
Right, but you're going to see an engineering plan, a landscape plan for each phase, and actually the use. So you're going to see it as a board, and that has to conform to the plan description. So you'll have those controls in place.
And with the exception of Site J, which is right directly behind the residentials, you're pretty much, Phase 1 is taking care of the property that buffers the residential areas in Phase 1, with the exception of Site J.
Well,
That would be the only one where those residents may have an issue, and my guess is the university is going to continue to try to purchase those parcels as time goes by.
Well, we've actually been taking a good neighbor policy, and this is true in the Aurora campus too. If you want to sell, come talk to us. We're not trying to force anybody to sell. That's part one. Part two is, it is our expectation that that'll be a parking lot. So they'll be buffered yet again and screened.
Very good.
One thing you can do is glance at the plan description. I'm sure it highlights in there what specific standards meet the village's landscape ordinance, with exceptions, lighting, that kind of thing. So I think the surrounding properties are protected. And I don't see this being any different from a huge residential subdivision that goes in that kind of outlines a few different uses that then they can build out over the next 20 years. So I understand, and I think there will be enough time or opportunity for members of the public to comment on future phases before they're approved, or at any one of our meetings as well, so.
The public hearing, the only difference is, public hearing is the 250 feet around the property. So public notice you can give for anything that you want to do, and obviously anybody's welcome to attend a meeting.
All right. Thank you.
You for your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, if we could have a motion on the Plan Commission recommendation, I don't think we've had that yet.
Correct. We don't modify their recommendation, but it sounds like there was support for working something out with the sidewalk issue along Jericho there, and have that spelled out in the ordinance that we approved. So the recommendation is unmodified. Trustee Sperling? You just have a look on your face.
To make a motion?
Well, no, I thought maybe you had a question.
No, I was
Just
making sure
for
I had the right
clarification purposes, Plan Commission recommended sidewalk or no sidewalk?
They recommended sidewalk along Jericho Road where they did not exist, where sidewalks do not exist currently.
So what we would be doing is we'd be making a motion to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation with the modifications that we've discussed as far as,
Accept
we
the
would just accept
recommendation,
it.
but you've given staff direction on what you want to see.
okay,
So-
okay.
To still require it, just
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yeah.
And that carries 5-0. Thank you. That's item C. Item D, which is ordinance 1761, is first reading. We'll approve this at a future meeting, hopefully December 12th. All right, we'll move on to item E, which is recommendation of the Plan Commission, PC 2016-025Z, regarding signs. This is a text amendment to Section 12 of the zoning ordinance. And the next one is the actual ordinance 1762, which we will not act on tonight.
Thank you. At their last meeting, the Plan Commission on November 17th recommended approval of a text amendment to the zoning ordinance sign code section by a vote of 5-1. And I'll explain what the one was representing in a minute. You might recall that earlier this year in July, we presented and the village board approved modifications and text amendments to section 1 through 5 and also section 9 of the sign code portion of the zoning ordinance. These new proposed text amendments basically deal with modifications to the administration section of the sign code and permanent signage, along with, the modifications in July were for administration and permanent sign sections. These new amendments deal with temporary signage, signs that are allowed without a permit, and prohibited signs. The majority of the updated items deal with longstanding items that have been in our sign code, but because of a recent state Supreme Court ruling on a major case out of Arizona, it's drastically modified how municipalities need to look at sign codes and what they can and cannot enforce. Village Attorney Laura Julian did a lot of work and research on the state, I keep saying the state, the Supreme Court ruling that happened this summer. And so we've modified our text to be what we believe in compliance with what was the intent of the Supreme Court ruling, so that we're ahead of the curve, so to speak, on how a municipality would deal with their sign code. So with that in mind, we've made these recommendations to the Plan Commission. They've agreed to recommend approval of these text amendments. Again, all of this has been thoroughly reviewed by the village attorney, and staff would recommend approval of these text amendment requests at your next meeting and acceptance of the Plan Commission's recommendation to approve.
Did you want to hit on the lone dissenting vote from Plan Commission?
Oh, thank you. Yes, that had to deal with interpretation of how we would deal with political signs. And it's limited, as Steve can probably better elaborate on, it's limited what the village's control, let's say, over political signs are to begin with. I don't know if you really want to comment on that.
Generally speaking, even before the Supreme Court decision, our ability to regulate in that area was pretty severely curtailed already. Certainly have the right to regulate the right-of-way, so if people are putting up signs in the right-of-way, you have every right to deal with that. But when you talk about the private areas where they might be able to put up signs, it's not only a text-based regulation, which is now basically invalid under the new Supreme Court ruling, but also it's inherently the First Amendment's most core protection, which is political speech. So in each case, we have long recommended basically to stay away from those issues because they are only time bombs waiting for you to happen if you try to tell people they cannot put up a sign supporting someone, or if you try to limit it to only 30 days before or after an election. Because quite frankly, people might have opinions that go well beyond 30 days. So really, this is far more expansive than the political signs. I'm not sure what the specific objection was, but the reality is that's an area where we have very limited rights to, I'm sorry, I didn't turn this way, very limited rights to regulate anyway.
I think the objection is that they felt that the new text did not allow us to go far enough to control political signs within the way it's written in the proposed ordinance or text amendment. So I think that was the major objection.
The reality is we have very little control.
Correct. And also, the key of this whole decision is that the court has gone so far as basically to say, we used to have categories, and we could regulate within categories and not discriminate within categories. But those categories were somewhat text-based. In other words, commercial speech, political speech, different categories. The court basically erased all of those categories and said, if you have to read the words, you're regulating based on content, and you can't do that. So now the ordinance is tied more towards location, size, illumination, all the non-text-based things.
So could a business owner put up, how can we regulate a business sign then?
We can regulate amount of signage.
Okay.
We can regulate how it's illuminated, internal, external. But when you talk about the actual text of the sign, whether it's a business or a church or you name it, and whatever they choose to put up there, the text is not really subject to our regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be, there was more distinctions there, but those have largely been erased now.
So with this amendment, we've eliminated a lot of context, if you will, and made it more generic. We still control size, we still control illumination, height, a lot of those things that can be done across the board regardless of the type of use. But as Steve has pointed out, we cannot control content per se. So that's been removed from the ordinance in the draft ordinance that you have.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of Plan Commission, which is item E.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
And that carries 5-0. Thank you. Ordinance 1762 is the first reading of that ordinance. We'll handle at a future meeting. Moving on, we have item G, which is a recommendation of the Plan Commission of PC 2016-027Z. This is regarding tree preservation and landscape requirements. And then I believe item H is the enacting ordinance that we'll vote on at a future date.
Thank you. That's correct. Item H would be the ordinance that you would have at a future meeting. Basically, what this does is it's a recommendation by the Plan Commission to amend the text for the landscape section of the zoning ordinance. The major changes deal with an updated portion of the code itself that deals with a tree list, acceptable tree list and prohibited tree list for landscape architects to use as they develop plans, and frankly for the village to use in terms of right-of-way tree replacement or right-of-way trees that are added to the community. So it ties the text to a review of the approved and non-approved trees to be planted on both private property and within the right-of-way to be reviewed by our arborist on a regular basis so that it can be constantly updated. The text amendment also updates the administrative section to allow the Community Development Department Director to approve minor deviations in the landscape plan if it's felt that the deviation in the plan itself meets the intent of the ordinance. If the Director of Community Development finds that that is not acceptable as a deviation, then that item could go to the Plan Commission for ultimate review and approval for a final decision. What that does is take any deviation or variation out of the hands of the Community Development Director and puts it into the hands of the Plan Commission without requiring a village board decision. So those are the two major items. There's some other cleanup language that has been incorporated into the text amendment. So again, the Plan Commission recommended approval, and we have the ordinance for you in 2 weeks, hopefully.
All right.
You have the ordinance now, not hopefully. You have the ordinance now.
And this is a move that'll help expedite the process where somebody's developing a property and now it has to go back to Planning Commission, then come back to the village board, causing weeks and weeks of a delay when They
Correct.
just really want to move a tree over.
Yeah, if we felt, or me or whoever subsequently is in my position felt that the deviation was warranted and meets the intent of the ordinance, then it could move forward. Again, if the director did not feel that, then it would be arbitrated, so to speak, by the Plan Commission.
All right. Is there any member of the board, perhaps with a horticulture background, care to comment on this?
I looked at the list of trees. They all look good to me. Some of these trees, or a few of these trees, I haven't seen since school.
Well, if you went to Ohio State, I'll let you figure out if the trees are good. I'll listen to your.
Thank you. That's that horticulture background. The list of trees look acceptable. These are trees that are commonly used in horticulture and landscape. I see these all the time, except for there are a few odds and ends that I said that I haven't seen since school. But
The intent was to, and Steve can explain this better than I can, but the intent was that if there's a new species or a cross-pollination of a series of trees that creates a super maple, I'm just making stuff up, but
I
a
know
hybrid, thank you, Todd, a hybrid tree, that it could be incorporated in the future on the list by the arborist,
I
without
noticed
the need for a text amendment.
that all of the ash species trees are on the do not.
Yeah,
So, thank you.
thank you.
Just glad that you had to get into that. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you for calling me out on that one.
No, I'll call anybody out. All right. With that, if there's no other comments, that's item G. That's recommendation of Plan Commission. We're looking to approve that tonight.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Didn't comment on item E, but for F and H, I'm not hearing any objection to adding those to consent for the next meeting.
That's fine with me.
Okay. All right, move on to I think. Yes. 1758, amending the village code to create a Class P liquor license, authorizing the sale of beer at gas station facilities, waiver of first and passage on the second reading.
I can talk, I mean, based on the discussion we had last time, this just creates a new class of liquor license, which allows for the sale of packaged beer only at gas stations.
I think it was written well that you can't sell one can by itself.
Yes, you can.
Huh?
I just got clarification on that
It is
earlier this
clarification.
evening.
Yeah,
It says packaged, one can, 40-ounce can, is a package. You can't drink it on premise. It's not a 6-pack or a 12-pack.
Yeah, the question, trustee Merrick did bring it up before the meeting. This is a distinction between can you drink it there or take it away. If it is in a packaged container and one of those large, mega-sized beer cans is a package, as long as they can't open it and drink it there, it can be sold.
So they can sell 40s.
Yeah, can
those
we
24
set a
ounce cans.
minimum volume
Yes.
requirement?
We can we can draft this ordinance any way that you want. So if you decide you want to only allow certain sizes or certain types of sales, I suppose we could.
Yeah.
This, correct me if I'm wrong, but this version, based upon our discussion this morning, this new class of liquor license is a more restrictive version than what we give normal gas stations, correct? Instead of
Mean Speedway or somebody like that.
Every
Yeah.
gas station has a license that would allow them to sell more than this currently. Because if one
correct,
doesn't exist.
including a 40-ounce container
That's
because it's a package, correct?
But some of our ordinances, we do not allow tiny portions of
Correct.
alcohol.
Correct.
So we can, if that's an actual concern of the board, that,
My concern would be how do you go back in time and take it away from Murphy, Speedway, and the
We're not.
places that have it?
We're not.
So now you're prejudicing against this facility and saying you can't sell one can, but the guy down the road can sell one can because he has a different liquor license.
Just so that we're clear, legally, you most certainly can do that. There are different classes of licensure, so you can draw those sorts of distinctions, and that's within your policy realm to decide. Whether you think it's a good policy or not to create that distinction, that's for you to decide.
And I think we were trying to discourage the full liquor license at this facility. He was interested in just the beer and wine. We weren't interested in giving him the full liquor, so I certainly wouldn't want to encourage him to go to the full liquor so that he could sell one can.
Well, I think that, at least my concern was the high population of liquor licenses in that area already. And that evolved into comment by the applicant that beer was all they had hoped to sell. But that's a well-populated area of town in terms of liquor licenses already. So it's a tough call.
It is, and had he been requesting the full license, I think my answer, my comment, my vote would have been, we're not really interested in that, but the beer-only license, that one doesn't, that doesn't have the same impact on me, and I'm not sure why. I think, and the amount, the quantity of beer that we could allow with this, I think I'm okay with. I don't see a distinction or a clear benefit to only allowing a certain amount. So in essentially we're requiring that they buy more beer, as opposed to just if they just want the one, they have to buy a six-pack. So, I mean, if that's a concern, we can look at it. But I think if somebody can afford to buy one beer,
Well, he's got a very small store, and he isn't going to put a lot of beer in there anyway, but he's going to need it to survive in that area. With the gas stations in that area are just, and gas is not like restaurants where different food will make it different. It's all price, and the gas is all the same. So
yeah, and it's a gas station. It's a destination. People will go there, fill up their car, pick up a six-pack,
Convenient.
and go home. I'm not overly concerned with that. It doesn't have the same impact as a full liquor license.
At the last time we discussed this, I said I was not in favor of it specifically for the reason Trustee Bond just mentioned. I think there are enough liquor licenses right along that Douglas Road corridor. The other thing we need to take into account, if we're going to say it's okay to sell the 40-ounce can of beer, we have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and I bring that up every time. And when we meet for the Douglas Road Task Force, many of the business owners say there's a lot of foot traffic there. There's also a lot of homeless people that walk through there. So there was a time when we were seeing the small bottles. Now I could see it being the big cans being tossed all over. I would say, well, first of all, I'm not in favor of giving the petitioner the license. I already made that clear. I don't necessarily have a problem with having this type of license. I think it is rather tailored, though, over into this situation. I can't see the Speedway or Murphy's just selling beer. It's a different situation. People are driving up there. They're not walking past that gas station to go get their can of beer and walking back home drinking their beer, because that is what's going to happen. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen.
That's what happens that happens at Murphy every day, because it's directly across
Right
from
across from the apartments.
It's right across from the
That's true.
apartments,
Yep.
so it happens
Okay.
every day.
Yeah, you're right.
So one of my concerns is we can control so much about this ordinance, but you cannot control how people act, and
Absolutely.
ultimately it's their responsibility to follow the laws. They're not supposed to be drinking walking down the street. That's something that we'll enforce. On the flip side of this, I want to say most of the gas stations in town have some type of a liquor license, and so we would outright deny him any full license for a myriad of reasons. But to deny him this, to me, seems like we're really putting this area at a greater disadvantage. Are there some concerns and issues in that area that can be addressed? Yes. But is this going to make that problem drastically worse or better by denying this?
I just am not in favor of adding another license to the area. I think we have enough licenses there. We have enough of the situation that I've just described there already.
That was what Doug and I were talking about. There is a lot of license there, but they're all coming from a longer way down on Douglas. So this, you won't have that much foot traffic, shall you say, I don't think, which might help.
They won't walk all the way down to Walgreens now.
Right.
They won't have to. They'll just stop short and
If
so
you're gonna
it'll be a
get-
little
But
less foot
that's not going to
traffic.
stop them from walking around, is my point. That's not going to stop somebody from walking around with a beer stuck in their coat or something like that.
And it's also not going, yeah, you're right.
It's not going to stop that. My point is, I feel there's enough licenses there. So I know that's the next thing we're discussing. This class of liquor license, in general, I'm okay with it. But I think in this situation, I would be very concerned about selling an individual can of beer, regardless of what the size is. I don't want to see that.
In this situation. So how do you feel about the Class P? Do you think that it
I'm
would be?
okay with the Class P of just selling packaged beer. And does it say it's just for gas stations? Did I read that correctly? Okay, it's just for gas
Yeah,
stations.
I wrote it as package too until Doug brought that up. I was thinking 6-pack, 12-pack, 24. I think if Steve could just put that wording in there.
If that's the direction of the board, I can.
So we could say a minimum of a 6-pack or
12-pack,
X number of
24.
ounces.
You know, it's.
We absolutely could.
I mean, I'm okay with, I get that, because then the price point's a little bit higher, so it seems like we're getting really far into regulating his business. Next, it's going to be, well, not Coors Light. Nobody will drink that.
Well, and at some
Yeah,
point
I know,
now,
right.
now instead of, to Teresa's point, now instead of one can, because this is a pretty popular sized can, now instead of one of these, there's 3 12-ounce cans that are now disposed of randomly down the path, as opposed to the one can that's almost home.
Trustee Marisak, because the video feed may not be that
Oh,
accurate.
this is-
That was an Arizona tea.
Arizona iced tea, yeah. This is not my, this is not my Coors Light. Thank you.
Hold that up again so we can get a photo.
And Trustee Marisak reached for it, not Trustee Youngerman.
Jason, no Photoshop?
All right. Any other thoughts or comments? What's the wish of the board on this? So this is just regarding a Class P liquor license. I like offering that for gas stations, and if all of them decided to go that way, actually, what's the fee for this relative to the other?
A little less, isn't it?
I'm hoping that it's a little bit less.
It's a little less. This is $750 and our others are
The other
$1,000.
one was like,
Maybe they would migrate that way. I think it's a lot less alcohol per pound, really.
Can I just clear?
Nobody's ever put it into that before.
The
You know what I'm
comments,
saying is, you're
I mean, we're not going to sell it to any guy over
not
200
going to buy
pounds.
a bottle of, I just think it's less alcohol, generally.
because it's been brought up.
Doug's asking.
To clarify, because it's been brought up a couple of times now, what liquor licenses are out there? I know Walgreens and the
Vita.
Home
pantry.
and home pantry.
So there's just those, which one?
3. There's 3.
What's the third one?
Chiquita.
Chiquita has a beer,
Chiquita Mart. Okay,
right?
thank you.
Yeah, but if
I was completely missing it.
If you
Thank
go that way, if you look at it, corner of Orchard and 30, you've got Walmart, you've got Walgreens, you've got Rosati's is a bar there. You've
Orchard
got
Stop.
Speedway, and what did you say?
Orchard Stop.
Orchard Stop.
Orchard Stop?
Murphy?
Yeah, Murphy. There are more liquor licenses there than there are along Douglas Road.
It's just a different
Well,
scenario.
that's a bigger thoroughfare. though,
Yeah.
too. There's a lot more traffic.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like the option of a Class P liquor license. And it sounds like there's support. Should we look into a volume or weight, more of a volume? Should we look at that, discuss it at the next meeting?
Could we say a minimum of a six-pack? Could we write that in there? So that we're discouraging the sale of a single can, whatever the volume is.
We could.
But I think that's, for lack of a better term, discriminatory against this one business. If I want a single can of beer, then I just walk a little bit further down to Walgreens and get my single can of beer.
I'll go let them then.
Yeah.
At least you don't have a bunch of them around there. I think that's, like she said, the least people, this is supposed to be a gas station for somebody to drive in, get gas, grab a six-pack, go home. It isn't walk there, grab and go across to the cemetery and have a bunch of one-canners. I don't think they're going to buy a six-pack and go over there. I really don't.
Doug, Stan?
I'm kind of with Steve that I think that we're over micromanaging it at that point. Because again, if everybody else has the ability to do the one can, I don't see where it's going to I don't think it's going to discourage somebody. They're either going to buy a six-pack or they're going to buy the single can, so they go every 2 days and buy the six-pack. I don't think that I think we're getting too deep into it when we start.
And one thing that we always have the option to do is to create this class of liquor license, see how this goes, and we can change the Class B liquor license and all the other licenses and make some sort of a minimum required volume. If that's what we want to do village-wide. I think I get nervous doing that, kind of changing the terms of their liquor license while their business is open and operating because of the potential negative impact on them. And again, micromanaging their business. If their business is causing, we know that the cans are coming from somewhere, but if there's litter in the roads and that's, attributable to a use, then we have other avenues for that I would hope that we would explore. But I think we have to assume that this user and all users, until proven otherwise, are responsible business owners and, act accordingly, at least how we would like, so. So it sounds like there's 2 for no volume requirement. Leave it as is.
I would vote for no volume requirement.
I think I'm for the volume requirement.
Okay. 4?
I'm for it.
4? Awesome. You guys are great.
Tied up.
Bring back a revised
Yeah,
ordinance.
we'll take no action tonight then.
Let's do that. All right, so we'll table this.
We'll then also table item K, or item J.
We don't need a motion to table those, but we will be tabling. Okay.
We're not getting through anything quickly today, are we?
All right, we have ordinance K, moving on. Item K, ordinance 1746, adopting the tax levy for 2016, first reading. Justin.
Thank you, President Brawley. The proposed tax levy of approximately $2,183,000 was announced at the November 14th board meeting, and notice of the public hearing was published on November 16th. The proposed general levy request with your packet tonight totals $2,168,000, which removes the allowed consumer price index or tax cap of 0.7%. So the previous number was $2,183,000. This number is $2,186,000. While the SSA levies total $341,500. It is anticipated the passage of the tax levy would take place at the December 12th board meeting. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
So at the last meeting, the increase was 34,000. 19 of that was on new property, and 15 was the tax cap we're allowed to take. So that 15 we've now taken out per the board's request at the last meeting.
And what was that percent, the tax cap amount?
0.7%.
Wow. Is that the lowest that's been for a long time? The allowable?
A couple years ago, it was 0.1.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's been low for a number of years here.
I know that we talk about freezing the levy a lot, and we have. This is what, the third year I think we've done it, but the reality is it stayed pretty well constant, even if we took the increase that the state allows us to take. I mean, it's not like our allowable has drastically gone up every year. But we have held the line on that, I think more so to make a point, at least for me, downstate, that we can handle freezing our own property taxes. We don't need the state to do it for us. So with that, the one question I had on the SSAs, and Todd, and I know you and I have kind of went back and forth on this. The whole crux of the argument for the basins a long time ago was that over time, the cost to maintain native basins would be less or will go down relative to what a turf. And I don't know if we've ever seen the data on that. How does this SSA levy, and it's probably for Justin, how does this compare to last year?
Actually, if you look at page 2 of the levy itself, on the right-hand side, there's 2 columns there. The one that starts at $25,000 at the top, that is the levy from last year. And then on the farthest to the right, that is what change there has been from last year. So, as an example, Arbor Ridge would stay exactly the same as it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Montgomery Crossings would actually go down $3,000, and so on. There are some that go down, some that stay the same, and some that go up.
So the farthest right in parentheses is a decrease this year.
If it's in a parentheses, decrease. If it's not in a parentheses, it's actually an increase.
5 are going down, 5 are going up.
Yeah,
3 are
mine's
staying the same.
And the Blackberry Crossing
5
one,
went up, 5 went down, and
3 stayed the same.
Cool.
the Blackberry Crossing one is going up $5,000, but that's a basin that was recently taken over, past couple of years, I believe.
That's one of the newer ones.
So there's probably, that's why it's going up, because they need to fix some poor plantings out there.
I think in the longer view too, the company that's done the lion's share of the basin maintenance is charging us significantly less than budgets that I remember approving 4 or 5 years ago.
I would agree with that comment, and to your earlier point, President Broly, I've noticed a reduction in the number of work tasks that have to be performed, those being things like shore stabilization and creating the erosion or rectifying the erosion problems that can occur with a swollen basin over time. If you have too much water in the basin, you kill off plantings and you lose some of the banks. We do see a consistent cost for the maintenance, the burning and such, but those man hours I don't think change from year to year. We have seen a reduction in some of that restoration type work, if you will. So I think, to your point, I think there has been a decrease in some of those costs, maybe not to the volume that you'd expect.
And these SSA funds go towards more than just native basin maintenance. There's lawn mowing in some of these as well. Like Orchard Prairie North has common areas that SSA funds pay for.
Many of these SSAs have lawn maintenance, landscape maintenance, basin maintenance, potentially signage that the village has now become responsible for.
Okay.
So there are a number of components. There's fencing in the Foxmore and Fairfield area that's covered through this SSA for a significant portion of it anyhow.
And did we calculate these increases for the SSAs?
Yes, we did.
And my only concern would be, I guess, Blackberry Crossing, where that's a significant increase. What does that look like to the average homeowner? I know you can do that. Come on, just.
I do not have that information in my head right now.
I'm just curious because I know we try and keep that levy at a few $100s per house per year. I just wouldn't want to see that if you guys can dig that up. What that comes out to be for those houses. The other ones that are getting decreases, that's fine.
Yeah, there's $21,500 dropping and $10,000 going up. So it's net savings overall. throughout the whole village.
And even if they don't decrease in cost to maintain these basins, forever, evermore, the benefit to having them to the world, I think, is a great thing. So, I mean, and people are, I guess, generally, at this point in life, what? At this point in life, they're accepting of the fact that these are basins that they're paying to maintain. So, it'll never be zero, but, okay, I'm done talking.
It was just a little tree hugging moment. I was feeling the
It
love.
was, I love this stuff.
It'll never be zero, but historically, like Trustee Bond said, we've seen it go down significantly each year. And maybe we're starting to see a leveling out of where it came down consistently for 4 or 5 years, and now we're starting to see a little leveling out where it's starting to maintain and we're hitting that bottom. But compared to when they were originally installed, it's gone down quite a bit.
And that's what it's supposed to be, is everybody gets theirs down to the right level. And like Matt said, that Blackberry Crossing West, half the people don't even know they're number 27, and they don't know they got a 68,000 increase.
Exactly. Okay. Well, we'll approve this at our December 12th meeting,
Correct.
the levy, and get it filed before the new year.
Absolutely.
All right. If you have any questions for staff, please pass those along between now and then, so we won't take action on that.
Thank you, Justin.
Moving on, we have item L, which is water meter reading equipment purchase. Director Hoppenstead.
Thank you again, Mr. President. As I'm sure many of you recall, in March of last year, I came before you requesting the purchase of 265 MXU Smart Points. That's the radio sending unit for the water meter. Allows us to read those meters through a drive-by network. That purchase at that time was to kind of create a more reliable network. We had a number of MXUs that had failed. The battery had died. Many of our MXUs, especially in the western portion of town, are in the same age range within a couple of years, so that's not terribly uncommon. We rectified that situation within about 10 weeks of ordering those. Upon our last reading cycle, we discovered another 416 MXUs that have failed. Again, battery life concerns. So at this time, I'm requesting the approval to purchase another 500 MXU Smart Points. Allows us to catch up, again, create a more reliable network, and then keep a few on the shelf for those periodic appointments that we have. In addition to that, as we increase the number of MXUs, and we've known this for some time, we had planned to budget next year for the purchase of this VGB, for lack of a better term, but that's what it's called. It's a meter reading upgrade unit that will kind of partner with our radio read system that rides along in the truck. That VGB unit allows us to read the data that these Smart Points is putting out much quicker. Currently, we're reading the Smart Points with a handheld, and we're reading the older technology, if you will, by the drive-by, because the drive-by can't pick up the Smart Points. Once you get to about 800 Smart Points, that handheld can no longer function at a driving speed. It would require us to slow way down to more of a walking speed. With this additional 416 being replaced, that's going to put us over 1,000. So I'm recommending that we use current budget dollars that are available to go ahead and purchase the 500 MXUs at a cost of about $60,000 and this VGB upgrade unit for another $20,000. Total fiscal impact is $80,000. It's within the current year's budget resources. We have about 103 remaining in this fiscal year. So it's not a significant concern for us, and as I said, that will eliminate us having to budget next year for this VGB.
But will you budget for more MXUs for next year so that we
Yes.
can stay ahead of the curve?
Certainly.
Okay. How long do MXUs last?
That's kind of a difficult question to answer. The original technology that they put out had a very short, if you will, lifespan expectation of about 7 years. Many people saw as many as 12 years on what was anticipated to be 7 years. Now they've changed kind of the battery technology to this lithium ion, I believe it is now. They're expecting about a 20-year life. We currently get 10-year full warranty and then 10-year prorated warranty on current day purchases. Now, some of these failing ones could be 12, 15 years old. Those warranties might not be as I'm explaining.
So these aren't things that the turnover isn't every 2 or 3 years, and
No.
we're
It's about 20 years.
apparently should we always expect to replace about 400 and just kind of do a rotation? Is it like a replacing of pavement type of thing, where we should just stay on a rotation of?
To some degree, that process is helpful. I'm hesitant to replace any prematurely, because you may get, there's another component of these that allows them to put themselves to sleep, if you will, when they're not calling for data. And then as the meter reader comes through, it sends a signal that wakes them up. They release the data, and then they kind of go back to sleep. So, I'd be hesitant to replace some after 12 or 15 years if we could have potentially gotten 20 years. But again, it's very hard to forecast the quantity that will fail in the coming year, especially given that a vast majority of our community was developed roughly the same time frame. So I think it's going to be an ongoing issue for us. We need to budget accordingly, and Director Van Voren and I have talked about some methods where we might be able to kind of forecast budget numbers, but only spend on an as-needed basis. I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
any better.
that does.
Do we get a break on volume if we buy in? I wouldn't think so.
Our volume is very minimal compared to some municipalities. I mean, Aurora uses the same technology, and they're buying thousands of them at a time. This is a large order for us at 500. So.
And the disposal of the downgraded ones, do they?
We send
trade
them all back.
Perfect.
They take care of any recycling of the electronic components. Some of them we actually get a small credit for, depending on their age. It's individually determined based on serial numbers. Any other questions, I'm happy to entertain.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yay.
And Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Moving on, we have item M, which has been pulled from the consent agenda. That was item I, Resolution 2016-013, adopting a policy with regard to expense and travel reimbursements. And Trustee Bond had a question.
At the first presentation, I indicated an absence of a desire to restrict our village staff to economy or a coach. And I didn't see any change, so I just wanted to see what the thought process has been.
What was done since the last meeting in regards to your question, staff did remove the word economy class. We did insert coach class, but not business or first class. We inserted the not business or first class because that's what we took from the discussion at the last meeting.
Rough idea of the difference between business class and coach class?
Depends on the air. I mean, I travel a little bit. Depends on the airline. It could be $30 to $80 or $90, just depending on what it is. Business class usually just gets you on the plane a little bit earlier and sitting a little bit closer to the front of the plane.
Well,
It's the same seats.
That's part of what I'm mindful of, and I think you're less likely to get bumped if you're business class.
I've yet to be bumped off of a plane. In my 20 years, I haven't been bumped off of a flight.
I'll defer to my colleagues, but I don't have any strong desire to put our village employees, for as little as they travel, into a cattle car type situation, especially for 40, 50, 60 bucks.
I mean, I think they'll be sitting in the same area. It's just, are you know, we're going to pay for them to get preferential treatment for boarding. And
You just stand in line a little bit less. That's-
Am I right about the less likely to get bumped in business class?
that I
Haven't been bumped.
couldn't tell.
Okay.
I mean, I think the assumption is correct, yeah, because, you
Usually
know,
when they go
if
to
I'm the
bump, they'll
airline,
ask
I'm
for
not bumping the guy
volunteers.
paying more for his seat.
I mean, usually if they're overbooked, they'll call for volunteers first and see if anybody is willing to be bumped and give you some sort of credit for that, but.
That's why.
You know, the reality is too, is if we had an employee that was traveling that wanted a better seat, they can pay, if they wanted to pay an extra $15 for a little more legroom or whatever it works out to be. Especially,
That's all you guys.
I have no problem with coach, to be honest.
Justin?
but I understand that and the concern.
If Public Works is traveling, do they have to ride in the cargo?
Nope.
Matt's trip to Cuba will bring Montgomery business to Cuba. We'll let him go first class on that.
There you go. I would totally go to Cuba, but not on village dime, so.
Well, I'm very proud of our staff and the work they do, and they're sometimes even called on to travel to make presentations to other jurisdictions, so
We
I'm
try
mindful
not-
of
We try
that.
not to mistreat them.
yeah.
Well, if
We
as
also, you know,
as department
at
heads,
least
and-
not publicly.
sorry, I interrupted your joke.
It's okay.
If department heads, if you guys noticed that this, and I think this is very similar to the policy that we've already had in place, right? Just expanding it a little bit. If you notice that this is becoming an issue and we can do some tweaking and still follow the requirements by the state, then let's look at that in the future.
Okay.
All right. If there are no additional comments, I'll entertain a motion
Motion
for
to-
approval.
Motion to approve?
And this is Resolution 2016-013. Is there a second?
Second,
Call the roll, please.
Wait,
Wait,
sorry.
so can we clarify, did we make
We
a
made,
change or?
we didn't make any changes.
well, no,
You're-
the change was
Okay.
made.
There
So
was
Trustee
a-
Bond, you're okay with the change that they made is my question?
I'm not entirely okay, but I'm not going to belabor the
And
point.
you live with it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think there's a reason they call it business class, and I'm comfortable with that, but
All right.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut anybody off there. Apologize. All right, moving on to item MN is D from consent, which is the village schedule of meetings for 2017.
Looking at the calendar, that will be the Monday after the fest. So I would say the board has two options. If you want, you can approve the schedule now with the saying you want to cancel that meeting. Or what we can do is you'll see, we keep all the committee of the whole meetings listed here in case we need them. We could leave it here. If something urgent comes up that needs to be addressed at that meeting, then we have it on the schedule. If not, we could cancel the meeting, you know, prior to that meeting. So either way is fine, it's just whatever the board's preference would be.
I make a motion that you put it on your calendar to make sure we don't forget to cancel that meeting.
Yeah. Leave it and cancel it later.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. So we'll approve as is. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Don't
All right,
forget.
that carries 5-0.
I just wrote a note.
All right, move on to item 7. I was told by Jeff that these will, unless we ask a lot of questions, will be 5 to 10 minutes total. These next two.
Better be 5 minutes or less total.
both?
Would anybody
Both.
fancy a break before this, or you just want to finish these?
Keep going.
All right. Moving on to item A, the strategic plan update.
All right. As we did last year, we just like to come back as we're heading into our budget season to kind of let you know during the past, you know, budget year, what we did regarding the strategic plan. Because we move into budget season, that will kind of affect what we budget. We'll want to put money towards helping us accomplish these goals. So I'd like to show you what we did do. In the downtown vision, I just point out the, you know, the development of the Montgomery in Motion theme to help attract attention to the facilities we have down here, both natural and commercial, and with the logo that we did out in the street. So under development, industrial, Last year we mentioned United Sugars development here. This year we have Nexio in the TIF district, outside of the district, Old Dominion, but also in that area in the industrial park. Together, these will add 200,000 square feet of new industrial development to the village, so that's a very good thing. Commercial, you can see the list there. We've had several new commercial developments in the past year. Benny's probably being the highlight, but a number of other firms that we're happy to have here, so you can see the list. As far as image, community engagement was one of our things. I said we either developed or participated in a couple new events this year, the Sunday in the Park, which was a big hit out west the first time, and then police and public works participated in the trunk or treat out at Lakewood Creek Elementary. So just trying again to get involved more with the community, throughout the community. In capital investment, technology, you can see we installed the new phone system. It allows us to more easily transfer calls between buildings. If somebody calls to Village Hall but needs PD, we can now transfer them directly there instead of having them call. After concerns from the board and residents, we added the zero out function, so we've tried to make it as useful as possible to everyone. We did change, said comes for processing our online water bill. With that, historical data is now able to be viewed by residents, so we keep having more and more sign up to go paperless. Justin keeps updating that in the notes to you. So, and then we did do upgrades to our financial, police software, and the door system during the year, so just trying to keep our technology up to date. As far as infrastructure, I point out we continue to use the non-home rule sales tax to resurface and maintain the streets, and point out one of the highlights this year was doing the permeable asphalt in the downtown alleys. So we did make repairs to the Mill Street Bridge, again to maintain the safety integrity of that, and the crossing at Webster Street to get that fixed. So, and then it's the fleet. Just say that we're taking a fresh look at the types of equipment we buy and also the return that they'll bring. Some of the new purchases, the multifunctional truck, which will be coming.
It's here.
Oh, okay, it will be leaving again.
Not until spring.
Spring. The hydro excavator, which we talked about, allowing them to do some B-box and water repairs. And then the building maintenance van, which is more useful to that job than the vehicle they previously used. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we will continue to work towards those goals that were set out in 2014 at that planning meeting and continue to report back to you.
It's very good. Good response.
Other than that whole paperless thing, somebody's got to defend the printers. Every time I see that in the notes, I'm like, no.
All right. Moving on, next item for discussion is the quarterly financial reports. Justin?
Thank you, President Brawley. As of October 31st, the village is through 6 months of fiscal year 17. The general fund budgeted revenues for fiscal year 17 are at approximately $9.8 million, and through October, we're at just over $6 million, about 61%. The largest revenue in the general fund is the state sales tax. We budgeted approximately $3.8 million in state sales tax, and through October, we're approximately $38,000 above projections, which does not include some of the new stores that Jeff just mentioned. The total general fund budgeted expenditures for fiscal year 17 are $9.7 million, while the expenditures through October are at 5.1 or 52% of the budget. There's several smaller revenues and expenditures noted on page 2 of the report. We're also tracking 3 other major funds as part of this report on pages 3 to 5. Pages 6 and 7 shows the village's cash and investments as of October 31st. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. On page 2, the expenditure, budgeted versus actual, and you said 6 months into this?
Are you looking at overtime?
No, I'm looking at, we're at 92% equipment, but we're done for the year, with the exception of this recent expenditure tonight. But, so, I just want to make sure that we're not, if we're at 99% for police pension, do we still have more payments to make? So it's going to be over budget?
No. So, as an example, police pension, typically what we do, it's based on how much we receive in property tax. We've received a lion's share of property tax as of October 31st, so that's what that reflects. The other example, equipment, we had budgeted to purchase a couple of mowers and some trailers, and we were able to do that earlier in the year and actually get 3 trailers instead of 2. And so we don't anticipate any more expenditures coming out of that area either. Most of these items really deal with timing throughout the year. One thing, whether it's overtime in any department, you need to look at overtime. The fest, overtime for the fest would skew numbers a little bit higher during that time period, so it'll go back lower later on in the year. So that's, you have to look at that.
Public Works overtime now might see a little spike, depending on the weather. I saw you knocking.
Or at least we hope.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I wanted to make sure that I was getting that correctly.
Police patrol overtime worries me a little bit. We're at 61.4%, and we're only 6 months through. Is there any reason why we'd be a little higher than what we expect? Is Montgomery Fest or anything like that?
Well, our busy time is summer, so ours should be coming down too.
Okay.
I mean, we're pretty, actually 61 is pretty good.
Fest does push it up.
Does
And
it?
our
Okay.
summer months are busiest too.
So what you're saying is summer is fighting season? Oh, okay, all right.
Chief is not saying that.
All right, thanks. Any other questions on the financials? All right. Hearing none, I'll move on. Thank you. New or unfinished business?
Very quick question. If we're doing this P license, should the chief tell that gentleman that it's going to be this way? Because he was talking about purchasing it if he could get it.
Yeah.
So could Dan,
I was going to talk to the village administrator after the meeting, because
and just,
Debbie's also expecting to call him in the morning, so we have to make sure she doesn't call.
right, just
we
so
have
that
discussion.
he knows what it's going to be, but he is going to get one. That way he go ahead with the deal, because,
Well, we didn't discuss that. We just discussed the addition of that license. There could still be a no vote on
We
that
would call and let
situation.
him know the changes that were proposed to the licensed class tonight.
Yeah,
Let
no-
him know that both items will be on the agenda December 12th then, just so he knows where it stands.
Yeah, Trustee Lee, in reference to that, because he wasn't going to sign the lease unless he got the liquor license, so I think we'll give
let him
that to him
know.
tomorrow.
And and I don't know that it's a done deal. I don't think he would close or sign that lease without an actual village approval in hand. So I thought about doing a straw poll, but it really wouldn't carry any weight, at least for me anyway.
Does that mean the board could change their mind? And
Okay. Any other items?
I have an item about leaf collection. I've been getting some inquiry about a lot of leaves still on the trees. I've been referring those to Public Works, but it maybe would help to clarify it publicly too.
So our program, as far as the term, beginning and end date, hasn't changed. What a lot of people are observing is seasonal conditions, where our first frost came very, very late, and even then, we had 1 or 2 light frosts, but not a significant heavy frost. In fact, to date, I am not sure that we've had what's defined as a heavy frost. So that has slowed the release of the leaves from the trees and the turning, combined with a very wet spring, summer, and fall, hasn't put much stress on those trees. So many of them have been able to kind of flourish and hang on to their leaves. They're confused about what the date is, I suppose. The issue that we at Public Works are really up against remains the same, and that is that our waste hauler, Republic Services, is unable to take them to the landfill after today, and that's been the case from year to year. Additionally, we have a transfer station permit with the Illinois IEPA to temporarily use our facility at Public Works as a transfer station. What that means is the trucks that collect the leaves bring those leaves back to Public Works, dump them, they're simply loaded up and then sent out in the trucks that would haul them away. That permit also has some criteria that doesn't allow us to store anything on the ground overnight and terminates the time frame for which we can pick up leaves. Republic is continuing to pick up bags throughout this week. There's also the option of mulching leaves, which many people have great success with. You can destroy a large volume of leaves across your lawn by mulching it, and you're actually adding nutrients to the grass. In many cases, it looks nicer than if you had just raked your lawn. So there are still options out there. As for leaves that are at the curb line, I'd be very hard pressed. The equipment has been broken down and put away and changed over for snow, which is in the forecast in the next 5 days. We don't have an alternate disposal method, nor do we have our permit in place to continue operations past today. So,
And Republic won't pick up lawn bags. So I just had this happen yesterday. I saw a resident that had them all on the street. And I said, leaf pickup is done. And they said, well, I said, and bag pickup was today, was our last day on the west side. So I have a feeling those leaves will be there throughout the winter, and your plow will be picking them up on their first push because they have no means to get rid of them because they didn't have lawn bags to put them into, and they won't pick up lawn bags after today. So now it's now the village's problem because they're going to just be in the street at this point. And I think that that's what we're going to come across in some of these areas. Especially, I would imagine the east side is pretty bad, I would think, because
I drove through
trees
the
are
east
older
side
and bigger.
coming here, and there's still quite a few piles of leaves. This is an issue kind of all throughout the village right now. People have mentioned it to me as well, and they're not very happy about it.
no, I can understand and empathize with that. I've received a number of complaints myself. I don't know what solutions I can offer at this point. It's, there's a seasonal component to this that I guess we haven't seen, at least in quite some time, if ever, that doesn't really align with the program itself by calendar year. Ironically, we picked up 200 cubic yards more this year than last year, and every cubic yard is about the equivalent of 40 leaf bags because we run it through the machine and it gets chewed up and compressed. So that's about 8,000 leaf bags more this year. I understand there's still quite a few leaves out there and there's a lot of unhappy residents. I'm kind of struggling because I don't have a solution to offer.
Is this something we can address with the Republic for our next contract to, in case this happens again, and also with the timing of the permit?
I mean, I can certainly inquire. Again, I'm not sure what resources they have. If a landfill closes,
Right.
there might not be anything they can do to help us either. So I've looked into what other communities who are continuing leaf collection this week are doing, and at this stage in the game, it doesn't seem to work for us. Plus, there's that transfer station permit issue. So there's not a very good solution for us and with the problem we're struggling with right now.
And I would just add, though, it's not a service issue, because if we had someplace for the leaves to go, we could do it, but that's the problem. There is no place for the leaves to go after whatever date it is.
Correct.
And people need to understand that.
Yeah, and when does our permit allow us to pick up leaves again?
I think It ends Wednesday is the 30th, so the end of business Wednesday is the end of our permit. Wouldn't even get us through the week, it would get us 2 more business days. And then it doesn't start again until mid or late October of 2017.
So we couldn't, it's not like we can pick up leaves, we can go back out and suck up leaves in April or March or February once we're past the worst of winter.
Not under the current permit. And we can't hold a stockpile either. They cannot sit on the ground overnight. So we have to be very diligent, even when we're operating the program, that what we collect is picked up and containerized that day. They do periodic and unannounced inspections.
Here's the issue, though, with what's currently on curb, which kind of all over the village, that if we do get snow and the plows go through, they're going to knock these piles all over. They're going to get into the sewer drains. They're going to clog the sewers, and then we're going to have flooding in the streets, which is going to cause ice conditions and potentially get water into people's basements. So this is just keeps getting worse.
The first portion I would agree with. They are going to get pushed all over with snow. I'm not concerned about them plugging the sewer drains. Actually, I'm less concerned about that after our first snow push than I am, say, tonight. We've had a significant amount of rain throughout the day today, and those leaves are in the street in many cases, so they're obstructing the conveyance of storm water. But when we plow curb to curb, very little of that debris will remain in the street. It will be in the right-of-way. It will be mixed with snow. It'll be frozen for a period of months potentially, and it'll be a rotting, ugly mess come springtime. But I don't think it's going to cause us many drainage concerns after the first push. I think that's a bigger concern tonight than.
So right now, we have 2 more days of our permit to collect leaves?
Without disposal avenue. So there's really 2 components that are largely prohibiting us from continuing our process. The internal inconvenience of changing equipment over, all that can be worked around. These 2 are much beyond my control.
I have a question. We've had many discussions recently of the intergovernmental, and from my understanding, Oswego is still picking up throughout this week. Is there a possibility for an intergovernmental action to allow us to pick up and dispose of them at their site and cover the cost for their hauler to take them?
They're not operating a transfer station. They're taking them directly to Fox Ridge. I'm not familiar with all the details of that, but it's my understanding that Fox Ridge operates a CCDD dump site for clean construction debris, which is strictly prohibitive of organic material. Leaves are such. So it could be that their contract has grandfathered them in, and that's why they're in the final year of that. They may not be able to renew that. So if I reached out to Fox Ridge, I'm guessing I'd be turned away. I can call.
Just trying to throw some
I think
outside of the box.
our current IGA is more of an equipment sharing than waste disposal.
And this is not an issue that, obviously, Todd noticed yesterday. We've been seeing this for several weeks, and I kind of knew that it would come to a head at some point, but the reality is we'd love to pick up all of the leaves that are on the curb. Hopefully they're stacked on the back side of the curb, right? Not in the road. Same with your trash, right? We don't want that in the curb line.
We advertise that by ordinance, but it's largely.
Right. And I know people want it off their grass, and that happened to me once down when I used to live on K Street, that I left them there and it was too late, and they sat there all winter, and in the spring I had to clean them up. The reality is we're doing everything that we can do. They'll be covered in snow, and in the spring, if it's a possibility for us to, update our permit, suck them up in, after things melt, that would be very helpful. If it's not a possibility for us to do a brief spring cleanup of that, then people will dispose of them as best they can. I am embarrassed to admit that I didn't know that we suck up all of our leaves in our whole community and we cart them off to a landfill.
It's an organic landfill, not the same
Oh,
as
okay.
your
That's better.
refuse, but, correct.
Yeah, we always put it in the newsletter, and half the people don't read the newsletter. There's ads in the paper, they still don't read it. I think next year you'll almost, because this is every year it's something like this. It's just that this year is extremely more people. There's always, every year though, Todd, in our town, there's things out there. Maybe it's to a point where one of these years it's gonna have to be a hangar type thing, and you give them the homeowners association, or you give them to me, and I'll take this side of the town, and somebody can take that or whatever, but I tell you, it's worth, I'd take it to this edge just so I don't get all the people. That's the big thing right now.
Everyone I talk to, our newsletter, everywhere, generally people are encouraged to visit the village website for the most up-to-date information. I think in today's environment, many people have access to computers or a friend that could check potentially for them if necessary. So that, if people would just kind of check in and get the latest information, they'd probably be a lot more attuned to what's going on. Unfortunately, the newsletter goes out at a time when, although we kind of saw this coming many weeks in advance with the no frost and such, there wasn't an opportunity for us to send something to their door. They almost have to go looking for the information like on the website.
2 questions. Is it possible for Republic to extend picking up lawn bags?
I can inquire.
Because it would at least give a resident an opportunity. I don't think that picking them up in the spring with a special pickup, I don't think you can vacuum those up in the spring, because it's going to need to be about June before they dry out. Because I had that last year as well, because I didn't make the pickup. And it was a hot, bloody mess. But if it's a possibility, again, I'm just trying to throw some outside of the box ideas there, is if they could, we could get an extension. And if not, can we ask Debbie to maybe put something on the front page of the village website that leaf pickup is done, and it's outside of our control, and it might curtail a few of the complaints and issues. And again, it's been on the website. I was emailing back and forth or texting with you last week, a resident, and I answered all the questions on my own right from the website, but it didn't curtail him from contacting me and asking me, but the information was right there. It says through November, that's it, so.
It wouldn't hurt to clarify that that date is not just our date. Some people are saying, well, why don't you extend it? And you've just told us why we don't, so that webpage could maybe add that dimension.
We'll add something to the website regardless. I will look in to see if there's potentially an extension for leaf collection pickup. As I understand it, though, even when the organic landfill closes, you can still dispose of waste. So the leaves can go out with the trash as well. They require a sticker, but you can get rid of waste.
So you can
That
put them
be
in
any
you could
number.
put them in a lawn bag and they'll take it. You're just not getting one free.
That's the way I've always understood it. I'll clarify that as well, and we'll.
And I was gonna
we'll
say,
put
and that might be
information out
good-
there as well. So
That would be good
your
clarification.
last lawn pickup may have occurred, and it's not as green for us to send that to a landfill, but if you're in need of getting rid of 5 bags of waste, that's available to you every week.
Yeah. And in the spring, when they also pick up in the spring,
They begin collection again in the spring. yeah.
because I know we do spring cleanup and everything, and
When we pick up leaves, we don't keep any of them, because when we pick up the leaves, they go through the vacuum. I'm assuming they're going through some sort of impaler or something that's chopping them up. They're going into the back of the truck. We bring them back to Public Works. We dump that. We can't leave that for more than, it has to be removed that day.
Correct. That has to be loaded and containerized that day. Doesn't necessarily have to be hauled off immediately, has to be hauled off by the end of our transfer station permit, which is Wednesday at the end of business. So there are containers of leaves that have been collected, say, on a Friday, that will sit Saturday and Sunday and be hauled off that following Monday, but they're not sitting on the ground, they're not subject to blowing around, they're containerized.
I know that in the landscape industry, and a lot of specs that I see anymore, they call for leaf mulch. And the leaf mulch has to be, if I take full leaves and put them down, that's not leaf mulch. It's got to be impaled, it's got to be chopped up. Is there any way that we can use some of this and give it to residents and have, have them come in and if they need 2 or 3 cubic yards of leaf mulch for their garden or whatever, or is this?
I think the best way to deliver that is probably on an individual basis. I mean, through mulching your leaves, you've created the leaf mulch, and you raise a fantastic point. That is a very strong, nutrient-filled fertilizer. It's also great for kind of winterizing your roses and some of your other perennials because you're packing, some insulation around them. Whether whole leaves or leaf mulch, the remaining volume of leaves at your property could be used throughout beds and gardens to protect your landscape and then cleaned up in the spring and disposed of then. They can yet be mulched. It may be a little bit more difficult now that they're wet, but if we get a dry period again, those things can be mulched up and used. Again, that can be done any number of ways, but to suck them up at the curb line, to provide an area where people could come and pick these up and control that site so that it's not going all over the place. I mean, I think the main component of Illinois EPA's permit through the Bureau of Land is to make sure that the debris isn't traveling off of our property, isn't being burned, whether intentionally or unintentionally, plugging up storm sewers. There's a number of things that they're probably looking at, plus the smell of a large pile. So, I don't know that I can accommodate that request in the short time frame either. Is that something we can look at for the future? Certainly. We're kind of tasked with maybe a 4-day problem, or if you will. Once we get that first snowfall, you can have leaves or you don't, but you're not going to know it till spring.
I think key getting that on the website that you can still, if in fact you can still bag them, they just need a sticker and Republic will take them, might solve a lot of people's issues.
And then, I know that you guys do this, but at the bottom of that post, and same thing on the website, if you can just include Youngerman's cell phone number and directions to call him, I think that would work, so. All right, we
my
beat
leaves
this
are
one
picked
up. Appreciate it. Anything else you want to finish?
I have one item. I would like to announce the birth of my daughter, Morgan Avery Youngerman, was born November 15th at 2:31 p.m., 6 pounds, 11 ounces, 21 inches long, and Mom and Morgan are doing great, and, except for the lack of sleep with Mom and Dad.
And she's gorgeous.
And she takes after her mom.
Congrats.
Thank you.
All right, hearing nothing else, future meetings, Plan Commission meeting for Thursday has been canceled. Our next Village Board and intergovernmental meeting will be on December 12th, starting at 6 p.m. No executive session. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.